to the 29th Summit of the International Solar Alliance. Excellencies, the ISA Summits have proven to be exceedingly useful in conceptualizing the new initiatives and identifying the gaps that need to be filled to meet the objectives of the International Solar Alliance. Thank you very much for boosting our morale every time by giving your precious time and attention. The theme of today's summit is insurance of solar projects. And like always, we have a stellar panel of experts and major players from the insurance sector who will deliberate on global insurance perspectives in depth and identify issues of insurance sector which are very critical for minimizing the risk in solar projects. So with the permission of DGISA and representatives from ISA member countries, I would now request Mr. P.K. Dash, Regional Coordinator, International Solar Alliance, to please present the welcome remarks and set the context for today's meeting. Over to Mr. Dash, please.
Thank you, Megha. Good morning, His Excellency Director General. Good morning, all senior officers and of this Ministry, Government of India. Good morning, His Excellency Ambassadors and national focal points. Good afternoon and good morning to all the panelists. I welcome all of you to this. I have been talking to you, the panelists, several occasions, and now we'll be meeting you over video in this webinar. I am grateful to all of you that to have agreed kindly to make presentation in this webinar. I'll straight go to my topic. Kindly upload my presentation, Bimal. Bimal, can you show the screen? Okay, I'll do it from here. Now it's coming. Okay, good. So this is the second webinar on drawing a roadmap for comprehensive framework for insurance of solar projects. And next. Bimal, I think it's not moving. The slide is not moving. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, you go ahead from your hard copy in any case. So
yeah, I'll go ahead. The basic objective of this summit is to, as it is mandated by Paris Agreement, holding the increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees centigrade above the pre-industrial level, and pursuing efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial level. In fact, in the preamble of the ISA, it has been mandated to undertake the joint efforts required to reduce the cost of finance and cost of technology, to mobilize more than 1,000 billion US dollar for investments needed by 2030 for massive deployment of solar energy. In fact, it's a very tough task which all of us have to work together. The goals given to ISA set the goals rather to devise a viable model to remove the barriers of this investment. There are several barriers to bring capital into the solar sector, as it's a new project, new sector, brownfield areas, greenfield areas, and the solar projects. So there are several barriers. How to remove the barriers and attract more capital into solar projects. The second goal is to prepare a comprehensive and viable insurance policy to cover all the risks in solar projects so that the risks of the investors or the financiers are minimized. The third is to bridge the gap between the market demand and the insurance coverage in order to provide risk-free investment ecosystem in solar projects. Recent innovation, there have been several innovations in solar sector. I'm not going into details, but Many like the hybrid solar cells where layer over layer solar cells also get activated, and similarly bifacial solar panel. There are several other innovations which has brought down the cost of solar projects substantially. There are not only innovations in solar. Are you able to see the slides?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. So there have been also innovations in solar applications, like floating solar, building integrated photovoltaic. Then several other innovations have come in battery as well, lithium ion, various battery, and iron flow battery. There are several innovations in solar parks and round the clock RE power, etc. The ISA has also aggregated the demand at almost 12.6 billion US dollar in several countries, 53 countries, 55 countries, in several sectors, and the job is ongoing, and it will be doing in course of time, this integration of the demand. So there is a huge scope in solar sector that the demand, there is a mismatch between the demand and the supply. The first ISA webinar on this insurance was organized on 17th September, this year, 17th September. And the observations were the Indian insurers, the financiers, the developers also participated. And the Indian insurance sector observed that key policy advocacy can be done through ISA platform. And MIGA also joined and highlighted the schemes of non-commercial risks faced by countries for solar projects, like transfer and convertibility, the breach of contract, expropriation of assets, and civil disturbance and terrorism. Other panelists also identified challenges of solar projects as technology disruption, module warranty, and performance guarantee, irradiation and natural calamities, force majeure, contractual failure of PPAs, and geopolitical risk. Apart from that, the State Bank of India, who is the biggest bank in India, has set aside 1 billion rupees for lending to renewables in 2020, with the benefits of concession on card rate, better debt and equity ratio. The recommendation of last webinar was support from international reinsurance agencies is required. And not only reinsurance agencies, the government and regulatory authorities are also required. Standardization of modules and insurance covers to mitigate the shortfall in solar irradiation. Division of insurance cost between seller, contractor, developer, and user by allowing pass-through of the insurance costs. Indian Insurance Regulatory Authority expressed the need for a study group under its aegis. The Secretary MNRI and the Secretary Financial Services, Government of India, promised support of Indian government to ISA for achieving the goal. Further discussion on critical issue relating to insurance of solar projects was also suggested. These solar projects as it exists in India, we have done a matrix, but it is many gaps are there. You can see from the map. Some are giving module warranty, some are giving solar panel warranty, some are energy shortfall, solar irradiation, some energy shortfall, but it's not a comprehensive insurance policy for any developer or any buyer who goes for this. The critical risks, after discussion and study, bilateral discussion with all the agencies and insurers, we have found that there are few critical risks in solar projects which need to be tackled. First is improper installation of solar plant, unintentional error in calculations of the projected performance, defect underperformance of the solar installation or PV module, lower than normal solar radiation or natural calamity or force majeure, expropriation and political risk. In case of countries, it is a cross-country investment, currency inconvertibility and volatility, substantial change in duties and taxes on imported equipment and changes in PPA after installation, contractual failure to pay in time the DISCOMs, the agencies purchasing the power. These are the few critical issues which act as barrier in case of the solar project investors. There is a survey done by All India survey done by Ncpre and NICE and Indian Institute of Technology. And this survey of 2018, it is also supported by the survey report of 2016. It has few important observations. Two of them are very important. The first is, the observation is that the PV modules in different climates degrade differently, and modules in hot zones degrade distinctly faster. This is a very important observation. And that shows that the cold climates, cold and dry climates like Ladakh, the panels behave better and the degradation is not as fast as in hot zones. So the report suggested dividing the country into two zones, hot zones comprising of hot and dry, warm and humid, and composite zones, and non-hot zones composing moderate, cold and sunny, and cold and cloudy zones. The second observation of this survey is that the linear degradation rate of young modules is higher than that for the old modules. This is very important. In the younger modules which have been installed recently, they are degrading faster than the older modules. It is probably because the quality issues has been, especially in the young modules, has been compromised due to aggressive pricing and timelines and improper handling and installation. There is wide variability in the quality and degradation rates of the modules. There is also another third observation they have made. There is wide variation in the degradation rate and also in the modules. Although the most modules available in the market carry the IEC certification, it should be noted that this doesn't guarantee that the module will perform adequately, though through its intended life. This is an important observation of this survey. The DuPont Global Field Inspection Report shows that 3 gigawatt capacity, almost 550 installations they surveyed and were visited across the globe, and the modules are showing high visual defect rates. Not only technical, but even visually also, the modules are showing defective signs. Most defects are attributed to cells and back seats. The back seats are very important, otherwise there is vaporization and it reduces the performance of the solar cells. So the back seats are showing a higher percentage failure amongst the visible module defects, which can be consequence on the power degradation and plant safety. The real concerns now, after considering all these reports and the developments and innovations, the real concerns in the solar sector are to cover solar irradiation, natural calamity, etc., in cost-effective way, both for the insurer and the developer. To bifurcate the performance risk associated with the cells, modules of non-standardized category, whose products are more prone to failure or are accelerated degradation. That should be segregated. If these substandard modules proliferate in the market, it can also cause a real harm to the global solar industry, its reputation with customers and with the government. There is need for standardization of products, test methodology, and risks management protocol. That is why we have 3 speakers who will be addressing on this test methodology and standardization. One is Professor from IIT, Sikatkar, and then Mr. Professor Shastri, and then Mr. Scott from OL. The reinsurers impose so many exclusions that the policies are not viable for the developer. This is the observation of few developers. The clear-cut division of the responsibility of seller of the equipment, buyer, or the developer, or the EPC contractor, and the user need to be spelled out. What is the responsibility of the seller, the responsibility of the buyer, and the responsibility of the EPC contractor? To what extent they will bear the cost of the insurance, and how the cost sharing should be done? That should be clearly spelled out. Insurance solutions for the discounts for contractual failure to pay to power developers. That is also an important area. And insurance backing for the performance of the contractors. The EPC contractors have some insurance backing for the physical damage, but sometimes there is financial as well. So that needs to be worked out.
Sorry to step in,
Required
Prasanna,
is-
keep the time in view.
Yeah.
Prasanna, you keep your time in view.
Yeah, only 2 more slides, I'll conclude. There is a comprehensive cover is required for the insurance sector. One is the warranty and the performance guarantee, which needs several measures. Like in case of manufacturer has gone insolvent, PV warranty insurance should work. There is need for a double trigger: the manufacturer against the warranty claims and the buyer in case of manufacturer goes bankrupt. Similarly, there are several other issues which can be presented by the speaker. I'm not going into detail. What is required is basically a comprehensive insurance scheme for the solar projects, which for operational phase, it should have a choice to, the developer should have a choice to choose a standard peril policy or an exclusion policy. A performance guarantee, whether there can be a graded insurance tariff for standardized product, need for standardization of products and risk management protocol, project-specific professional indemnity insurance for the financial mitigation of the design risk of the contractor, the DISCOM power purchaser responsibility to provide certain guarantee on the timely payment, and protection of cross-country investments, fluctuation in currency and taxes. The the PPA charges or the changes both in cross-country as well as within the country. If the agreement is changed in between, then what security should be available to the developer? Whether there can be an insurance solution by way of surety bonds or by developing credit insurance products to cover risk against discounts. The ISA has a 3-way roadmap. One is the demand assessment. ISA shall aggregate the demand, and ISA shall form a consultative group with stakeholders including policymakers, insurers, reinsurers, financiers, EPC contractors to prepare this comprehensive policy. Third is ISA will will develop a comprehensive policy which will be implemented which will be the guideline for all the governments, regulatory authorities across the countries. I think I have completed the topic, and this is the context in which we want the presentations now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for highlighting the critical issues that act as barriers for investment in solar sector. And I'm pretty sure that made by the previous studies will help us in chalking out the way forward. With this, I now request His Excellency Director General International Solar Alliance, Mr. Ncpre, to please present the opening remarks. Over to DG.
Thank you, Megha. Secretary MNRE, Mr. Indushekhar Chakrabarty, who has just joined, and he'll be giving the inaugural address focusing on something called Reinvest. The third edition is going to be on 28th of November, and we have invited all member countries and as well as prospective member countries, so you are most welcome to join. And more details, Secretary MNRE will be giving to you. Excellencies, it's always a pleasure to meet once every month, and mostly we do it on the third Wednesday. And I'm very happy this is the 29th such summits we are meeting, and this we call as a family affair, where we actually discuss, deliberate, and carry out the dialogue so that we can improve our services to the members. We can implement the mandate of the Assembly. So to cover a few points, we are very proud to participate in the host country's Reinvest event, and we are going to have a session on One Sun, One World, One Grid. We are most welcome to that. And number two, as you saw in the Assembly, we got a feasibility study of the World Solar Bank. We have circulated it to all the contact points and national focal points. We are getting the translated copies also circulated. So we'll be very happy to get your feedback so that this report can be finalized and taken to the standing committee next. To inform you a little more, the Assembly has approved the constitution of an international steering committee for the World Solar Bank. This will have the president, the co-president, 8 vice presidents from the 4 regions, as well as it'll have the Director General of ISA, as well as 3 expert members. in banking and finance, and they will sort out the next steps or the way forward. We will also carry out a feedback survey, and which will be circulating to find out, about the work plan and what we do in future. That is just to get a structured feedback from the members. And I should also keep you posted that the recruitment of staff, we have advertised 4 posts for directors, and they're all as per even pay scales. And we need more applications, particularly from other continents, as well as from women candidates. So once again, we have extended the date. In fact, we have got more requests because of COVID to extend the date further. That we will do. But at the same time, I request your personal attention to persuade your officers and others, both from private and public sector, as well as from government, to apply for these posts. And I'm very happy to say that the solar banking, where we targeted 500 officials, bank officers to be trained. Yesterday, we had one that has started in Spanish, and we're very happy to get 35 candidates from 3 countries. So far, we had trained 200 officials earlier, and we have still to train 250 more. And I would request you to send more bankers for this virtual training, and which is a good thing, which is very important for all of us. And then, of course, the 47 projects for small island countries and LDCs. I'm very happy to say, my colleagues who are looking into the project group, they're doing a wonderful job. So we would appreciate that if more proposals they can get quickly, so that we can put the projects on ground within a given time. I'm also very happy to say the second batch of the MTech, 20 mid-career professionals have joined in Delhi IIT, and it has just started. In fact, the Honorable President of the Assembly will be addressing the outgoing batch of 22 officers who completed 2-year MTech course. This month they will be completing. And it was all on energy management, the focus on solar. And then the new batch has joined. This actually is a solid achievement for ISA to get officers who are going back to the country, and they will be a source of policy formulation, source of technology transformation. And we're very proud that ISA has been able to put this in place. And I'm also very happy to announce that the next year, the MBA program in energy management will be started by IIT Delhi, and we'll be soon writing the countries to nominate officers, and more details we will go ahead. And the undergraduate program for island countries will also start, but as the Delhi IIT has expressed its inability to conduct this undergraduate program, we are trying to find out a suitable substitute so that the undergraduate program can start. Having said this, I must say that 4 things we have circulated from ISA. We would welcome your feedback on this. First is this is the ISA progress report. In fact, it lists out by September in 4 areas. We have listed out as incubator, some 7 activities we took up. As accelerator, some 28 activities we took up. As facilitator, we had 23 activities. And as enabler, we had 12 activities. So some sort of, feedback evaluation form we'll be sending. And if we have more ideas, we are happy to implement. And even a more detailed progress report we have circulated. We have put it in the web page. And I would request you to kindly go through it and give your feedback. And most importantly, when we had a meeting with the Honorable Prime Minister of India, he had given a suggestion that we come up with a vision and mission statement of ISA by 2025. And we have taken help of KPMG to finalize it. This also we have circulated to one and everybody. So we would request your feedback so that the draft can be taken further. And more importantly, this is about the first World Solar Technology Summit, which we organized on 8th of September. Some 10,500 participants were there in the event, plus we had a YouTube this thing. We had also promised for another event called World Solar Investment Summit in February. We are looking into the feasibility, and perhaps we will take a decision quickly. this report also is in the net. In fact, it gives all the speakers that came. We had a tremendous successful event, and not only ISA got around $9 million of corporate contribution out of it, but we are formulating a technology charter and finding out what are the other outcomes and outputs of this World Summit can be implemented in future. With this, I once again, welcome you all, especially the panelists from all over the world and my colleagues who have put in a lot of hard work, and our excellencies, whom we call it the ISA family. And I'm very happy to say that Mr. Induced Chakraborty, Secretary MNRE, the Vice Minister from India, will be giving the inaugural remarks. And now to him. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, DG sir, for always guiding us. We are honored to have with us today His Excellency Mr. Induced Chaturvedi, Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. I would now request Secretary MNRE to kindly present the inaugural address. Over to Secretary MNRE, please.
Yeah, Secretary is going to speak now.
Sir, I'm Dr. Mathani from MNRE. Just important meeting with the POMA has started immediately. So he will join in between sometimes. Sir, Honorable Secretary MNRE will join once it is a short meeting, and he will join in between.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
So Megha, you go to the next one, and when he comes, we'll again take it up.
Sure, sir. So now I call upon Mr. Yashasvi Sinha from Anviti Insurance Brokers to present the global insurance perspective in solar sector to the August gathering, please. Over to Mr. Sinha.
Thanks, Megha. And I think you'll be uploading the presentation. So thanks, ISA, for giving me this opportunity. So based on the various discussion that I had with Mr. Dash and the other colleagues, the idea, is there someone showing the presentation? Rajiv, someone?
Yeah, just a second, I'm sharing.
Okay, yeah, sure. So looking at the time and the eminent speakers like Jan from IFC, Jan from Aerial Reef, Mr. Chaudhary from Renew Power is there. So I'll be trying to keep it crisp and focus on some of the insurance exposure and the risk that we have seen in various other parts of the world. And because Jan will be talking about the lender's perspective and Mr. Chaudhary will be giving the owner's perspective. So I'll make sure that I'm not getting into the aspect that they want to speak about, and I'll keep it focused with the presentation stuff. So quick background till the time the presentation start. Anviti is an insurance broking company started by Narayan Murthy and Sudha Murthy. You can go to the next slide. Do I have the access? Yeah, and we are the network partner of Aon, and hopefully shortly Aon is going to set up a joint venture with Anviti, so it's going to be Aon India. It's just that we are waiting regulatory approvals. Next slide. So what I can tell you, this is our experience, and from where, like as Anviti, we have worked for projects in India, Latin America, Australia, and obviously Aon as probably one of the biggest renewable energy team. So my experience working with project developer from Europe, working in India, or the Indian contractors, working in Latin America, Australia. So working with these guys, some of the exposure, some of the risk that we have seen, that's what I'm going to focus on. Rajiv, you can go to the next slide. So I've just highlighted some of the risks associated with the solar sector. And as I mentioned earlier, yeah, you can go to the next slide. Yeah. As I mentioned, Mr. Vijay Chaudhary and Yan from IFC, they will be speaking about some of the exposure, like Yan wants to speak on the force measure and the lender's perspective. So I'm just going to focus on some of the key issues. Please go to the next slide, Rajeev. Here, what I have tried to do, I've tried to show the key stakeholders in the solar sector. And each stakeholder has their own risk perception, risk mitigation, and insurance buying philosophy. And what they try to do in form of the various contracts they sign between the various parties, they try to transfer their risk from their balance sheet to someone else. And that's where they are used to working in certain way. But when they go across geography, they face certain hurdles, certain exposure, which they have not seen when they're working in their country. For example, if we, and that's what I'm going to focus. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see, I'm just taking an example of a professional indemnity. When I have seen contracts in India, whether it's or the project from the European or some other parts of the world, the project owners or the lenders from Europe, but no one focuses on professional indemnity. But when we go to the Latin America or the Australian market, in Australia, Rajiv, you can go to the next slide. When you go to the Australian market, professional indemnity is the most important aspect. The lender does not approve a project till the time the contractor has not given a project-specific professional indemnity policy. And the premium over the years have gone off the roof. This is the talk of the town in Australia. There are hardly any insurer who wants to underwrite professional indemnity for solar sector, and the premium is 4 or 5 times what it used to be 2 years ago. This is what it shows, that there is a certain exposure which the market is conscious about, and then they don't want to underwrite given an option, right? So, and as I told you, in India or some of the Asian country, we don't see the clients are conscious about it. And I have personally seen losses in multi-million dollars because of the design failure. What does actually professional indemnity covers? This is basically the design and the workmanship failure, which leads to a financial loss to the developer and obviously to the lender. So this is where there has been a design issues which led to the changing of the entire structure, which is costing more than $1 million in some of the cases. So these are the various issues where, because as the EPC contractor, you see that they take the maximum exposure on their balance sheet. They are the one who guarantees the performance of the plant. And you can't typically be dependent on the balance sheet of the EPC contractor, which is in today's market, which is already stressed. So you need to have certain insurance solution which can support the viability of a project, long-term sustainability of the project, where the lenders, investors can bank on those projects and can look at the long-term guarantee. So 3 are the most important thing in a solar project, which we all know: the sun, the panel, and the site, which is the land. Since Mimicry and Ariel, we will be talking about the panel warranties, I'm not going to touch on the panel aspect, but I'll be talking about the title defects. So land, which is the most important, one of the most important aspect, and you need a large chunk of land when you're developing a large project, 400 megawatt, 500 megawatt, 100 megawatt, typically 5 acres per megawatt is what we see is required for the project development. And each country has their own categorization of land. Like in India, we see agricultural land, forest, tribal land, and each country has their own thing. So when you're developing a large project, and because of some title defect, maybe in the middle of the plant, and where either you have to settle those issues or you might have to shift the entire plant, they're right-of-way issues. So we are working with certain reinsurers, and we have seen in past some of the largest renewable energy developer in Europe, they have bought these policies as a risk mitigation tool when they are investing a large chunk of in a large project. That was wind, which I saw in a couple of years ago. But solar now needs these kind of solution, because when we are depending on the large project and the land, and tomorrow an investor comes and then there is an issue, the entire project goes for a toss. So title, we feel, is an important aspect which needs to be developed and can give some security to the developers and the investors. And I've seen it, just surprisingly, in one of the geographies, without naming them, I saw a contract where the government authority said that if because of in the land, if they found out some article which is of archaeological value or the religious value, they are going to take over the chunk of land. Just imagine you're developing 100 or 200 megawatt of power plant, and suddenly in the middle of that plant, because of some reason the land is taken over, then the entire project goes for a toss, or it faces a hurdle which takes a long period of time to sort out. Second aspect, second insurance, which is in today's market is getting very critical, is the weather. No one can guarantee in today's market how the weather is going to change. We have seen in some of the cases, we have read some reports where the actual generation and the projection, there is a difference of almost 10%. 10% difference in radiation can impact the plant generation in a very drastic manner, because today what we have seen, the way the PPA rate has been negotiated, it's really one of the cheapest what we saw 5 or 10 years ago. And in this case, if the weather changes so drastically, where there's a difference of 10% or 15%, just imagine how the output and the financial viability will go. So this is also a very important tool, and the industry, the insurer, the reinsurer should support in structuring those solutions. There are those solutions. It's just that it needs to be more viable, and the insurer and the project owner needs to realize that it's a long-term relationship. It's not an annual solution that we should look at. If you look at the 3-year, 5-year solution, that's what we are talking to some of the reinsurer. That will help in long-term sustainability of the project. So again, something very critical which we need the support from the government and the regulator is the credit insurance. We have seen in the different parts of the world that there has been a payment delay or default from the utility. And because of those delays, there are those companies which are literally struggling to manage their portfolio. So in this scenario where credit insurance is typically not given to the government companies or to certain sector, the regulator and the government of various countries needs to push the local regulator and the insurer to at least support the solar investments. Because without taking name, we have seen the clients have made 400, 500 megawatt of portfolio, and just because of the payment delay, or even we have seen now the lot of government entities or the grid is trying to change the PPA. They want to change the rates of the PPA. The entire financial modeling goes for a toss. So political risk insurance also plays a critical part when it's a cross-border investment, because today solar is actually a global village where modules are coming from China, Taiwan, other parts of the world. European developers are developing projects in Australia, Latin America. Indian contractors are developing projects in various parts of the world. And this, the entire globe, when it is coming together to develop and to support the solar growth, which is required for the green energy development, there needs to be some support from the various countries and the insurance on the political risk solution. So that's something that we need to look at. Surety bonds, in India, it's not allowed, but in various countries, I've seen in Latin America, some of the contracts require surety bonds. This is again also very important, as I already mentioned, that the EPC contractor balance sheets are already stretched. In that case, when you're banking on their balance sheet, the bank guarantees that they are providing in the situation, if you have a surety bonds, that can give our lenders and the project owner more comfort in terms of the guarantees that the EPC contractor is giving. So idea is, I'm not telling that we need to buy all the insurance. A proper risk profiling needs to be done. And based on that, the geography, the region, and other parts, we need to decide that which are the critical exposure which needs to be covered. Each project is different. No two projects are same, even if it's using the same modules, because of the change of location, change of region, change of the grid that they are connecting to. So it's important a proper risk profiling needs to be done. And these are certain key aspects which needs to be developed and grown over a period of time, which can give the investors and the lenders more comfort, and even the owners, who's the one who's actually betting the entire thing on it, the sector, a comfort based on which a long-term sustainable growth can be planned. So that's it. I'm just keeping it short and crisp. I'm just handing over to the ICT. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. Clearly, your experience of having studied solutions for solar in various countries have given us a perspective on risk transfer solutions. And I'm sure focusing on key solutions which you have highlighted will support sustainable growth and attract investment in solar. Moving forward, we have with us today Mr. Jan P. Mamenthalar, Regional Insurance Lead Asia, International Finance Corporation, the World Bank Group. Mr. Mamenthaler is a federal insurance expert licensed in Switzerland. He's a member of the board of directors of the Potomac chapter of Risk and Insurance Management Society and also a past member of RIMS International Committee. He's also a past member of the private sector advisory group to the UN ISDR. Mr. Mamenthaler is currently in charge of leading IFC's insurance services group in Asia and is providing services for IFC's infrastructure, manufacturing, agricultural services, and financial markets clients, and building capacity in emerging insurance markets, as well as placing IFC's corporate insurances. Mr. Mamenthaler today will discuss on this forum hard insurance markets, its impact on solar energy projects, and force majeure provisions. Over to Mr. Mamenthaler, please.
Thanks very much, Shanika. Thanks for the kind introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd also like to thank ISA for the kind invitation to address you today. And if somebody could please bring the slides up, that would be fantastic. Sorry, IT, could I please have the slide up? Rajiv, could you please help me get your IT to launch my slides?
Just give me a moment, sir.
Sure, thank you.
Is it visible?
Fantastic, yes. If you can make it in presentation mode, it'll be nicer. Thank you, super, thanks. You can actually go to the second slide, please. Good, thank you very much. So, quick introduction. Some of you may not be familiar with IFC or the International Finance Corporation, as is our long name. So we're about 60 years plus old. So we are a multilateral financial institution. We are part of the World Bank Group and actually the largest of our kind that focus on private sector development in emerging markets. So we produce yearly about 12% of our investment volumes are in the power sector. Out of that, the great majority is renewable energy. And again, in that, solar plays a very significant role. And I'm sorry for the slightly busy slide here, which tries to show various components of who we are and what we do. But as I said, solar is important. You can see what we're looking for in terms of projects. You can see also what kind of instruments we're able to provide on solar projects. And you've got a couple of our deals up there. You can see our current portfolio of about $1.1 billion invested in solar, 55 projects. What is really important for us is to develop the market for solar to be effective. And we bring that in terms of initiatives, which we call scaling solar. And you can see examples there in the deal sheets in Zambia and in Egypt, where a multitude of projects were launched under the same umbrella. And that kind of approach of facilitating the deployment of solar projects is a key cornerstone of the work that we do. Within IFC, so I am amongst a group of about 10 insurance experts that support all of IFC's investment work. And where we use insurance and risk management in the broader sense as a way to create sustainable projects. But unfortunately, a major roadblock has recently occurred. And if I could ask for the slide to be turned, please. So as you may all know, the insurance industry is highly cyclical. And it's gone really year on year, depending on which line of business you were looking at, it's gone through pricing cycles. And what you see in this particular slide is a development of the price for a global book of business as well as an Asian book of business over the last 4 years or so. And you can see a distinct change that has happened, I would say, in the early phases of last year, where a significant hardening of the market has started and is very much ongoing. It's actually gotten worse over the last quarters that were observed. What is interesting in this particular cycle, it seems to be a pretty extreme one. And I'd say for decades, this is sort of the most extreme I've seen it. I would also say that this is unique because many of the underwriters that are out there, many of the brokers are out there, this is actually the first time they're faced with this problem. They've never seen a market that behaves in such a way, and it is slightly novel in that particular sense. Sorry, can I try to have slide 3 back again, please, Rajiv? So what does this also meant? So it's not only a reflection of the price that is actually increasing. What is happening in this, what we define as a hard insurance market, is that we actually also see underwriters exiting because they don't like the particular line of business anymore. We've also seen downgrades, notably in India. There were 2 major downgrades of international players over the last few months, and that in itself has its challenges as well. So Rajiv, can I ask for the full screen again, please? And you can flip to slide number 4, please. Rajiv, can I please have slide 4 up? I cannot control it from my side. Okay, so 2 forward, please. That's 1 too much. 1 more, please. So the question now is, when we see this hardening insurance market, the hardening insurance market really shows itself in various means, and some of them are sort of, not very nice, but we can sort of deal with them. Some are really difficult to absorb, and then sometimes are really difficult to handle. And I'll take this by pieces of how to say, results that we see of this hard insurance market and what it means for the respective project. So what I would generally say is the placement process for insurance has become more difficult. It generally takes more time today to place or to renew an insurance. There's more requests for data in the underwriting process, and clearly what it needs is a strategy, and it's a strategy that starts early enough. We generally tell our clients, if you're 2-3 months away from an insurance placement or a renewal, you're probably at the right time to go ahead and start the process. Any later than that could cause problems. The second effect, we saw it in the previous slides, premiums are going up. The reductions that we've seen over years, where insurance buyers went to the management and said, well, the premium's gone down again, those days are clearly gone. And I think they'll be gone for quite some time. So I think here the important message is be ready for that. Make sure that you're warning your management that this is happening in the insurance market and is likely to have an impact in one shape or form, or maybe several shapes and forms, on your particular project. Make sure your insurers or your insurance brokers can actually provide you with premium budgets so that you can sensitize people on this particular development. Where it gets a little bit more tricky is higher deductibles, which is really what we're seeing today. So insurers are asking the insureds to take a higher interest in the placements which are being done. That per se, in my view, is not a bad thing. If you're actually confident in your project, you should be comfortable to take more risk. But it clearly asks for an increased understanding of your risk, something Mr. Sinha in the previous presentation alluded to already. Where it's difficult is when you have shortfalls in placement. So this could simply be involuntary, that you have a real lack of interest in your particular project because of different reasons. So you're unable to complete your placement in time, or you're actually unable to complete at all. So I would call that the involuntary shortfall in placement. You also have the issue of the counterparty risk. So I would call that somehow the voluntary shortfall in placement, where suddenly your underwriters don't have the same credit quality anymore as you would have been used to, as you would have liked. And I think there again, it is getting a clear understanding of what your requirements are. It's understanding who the counterparties are, what their financial strength rating looks like. And again, the broker clearly has a strong role to play there to guide the projects. I would also say make sure that participants, and I'm talking particularly on reinsurance side, are fit for purpose. What I say with that, if you have a reinsurer on your project in, I'll pick Nepal as an example, that your reinsurer is based in Kenya, for example, you can ask yourself, is that really appropriate for you to have your majority of the risk actually placed with a party that's on a different continent, doesn't necessarily understand the environment, etc. And I think the third point important to consider, so it's credit quality, it is fit for purpose, but also is the reputation. And there you have a community of risk managers. There's organizations like RIMS or in Asia Parima, where you can exchange views. And I think it's important to understand not only balance sheet of your counterparties, but also the way they normally deal with clients. So that's an important part as well. Last point is, I think it's difficult to see on the slide here, is reduced coverage. Now that for me is the most difficult part of the hard market, because here clearly you find it difficult to actually evaluate what the impact here is. Now I'll showcase what I mean in the next slide when we talk specifically with regard to force majeure. So Rajiv, if you wouldn't mind changing the slide, please. So turning to force majeure relief. So important, insurance has been an important component, in particular through business interruption or loss of profits coverage in the discussion for force majeure. So I listed a few of the typical force majeure events that we see in power purchase agreements or the likes. And I just wanted to go through these and highlight a little bit what the hard market does. So natural catastrophes are typically things which are covered. So we can say yes on the coverage perspective, broadly speaking, but be aware that insurers are including increasingly coverage limitations. What I mean with that is that it needs to be, the purchase needs to be planned according to certain standards. And if you don't meet those standards, haven't taken those into account when you build the plant, then coverage may not be there to start with. Secondly, insurers will increasingly apply loss limits, so you don't have your full sum assured insured available anymore. So that's something to be mindful of. Epidemics or plague or pandemics, we used to be able to get coverage for this. There was a very limited market that offered this. Today, that is pretty much gone. I would urge you as project owners to be particularly mindful of new clauses like the LMA clauses, which have been introduced with pandemic exclusions, that if you read them, go extremely broad. So be mindful of that. Acts of war, rebellion, civil war, etc. Again, I would say generally insurable. Again, I would be careful there that you clearly understand definitions of coverage and that you're also comfortable with the loss limits which are generally imposed on that particular product. Radioactive is generally there. That has always been excluded, and I don't think there's a solution there. It's not something the insurance market is designed to actually cover. The last point is a really tricky one, and that's events at suppliers or customers. So there, I think that is probably the coverage area where I've seen most limitations come into place as a result of the hard market. So there again, be very mindful that you understand which customers and suppliers are actually covered. Do you need to declare them, or is it a broad coverage? Is it a full coverage from a perils perspective? So is it all risks? Or is it maybe just fire and explosion perils? So be very mindful of that. And then again, you're most certainly going to have loss limits on there. So be sure these are appropriate. And always, as I say, obviously, any business interruption coverage is always subject to physical loss or damage. So if you have a simple interruption because of a strike which is happening next to a plant, there isn't going to be any force majeure relief through insurance on that. So be mindful of that. And I think all in all, what this hard market calls for project owners and risk managers is to actually understand what you are buying insurance for. Insurance is there as a solution to a problem. It's not a solution which is looking for a problem. So be mindful of that very subtle difference there. So with that, I want to thank you. Thanks again to the ISA for inviting me. And I wish all of you a good continuation of the discussion here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Momentilar, for your insightful presentation. You clearly guided us towards the increased understanding of hard insurance markets and various force majeure provisions. Thank you very much. I now call upon Mr. Vijay Chaudhary, Vice President Insurance, Renew Power, to discuss reliability and risk management protocol for solar projects in design, operation, off-takers solvability, and exchange rates for affordable insurance premium. Mr. Chaudhary is a seasoned insurance professional with an experience of more than 32 years. He has worked for a PSU and private insurance companies, Indian and multinational insurance broking houses, and with large corporates like Lanco Group, Bharti and Bharti Airtel. Presently, Mr. Chaudhary is working for Renew Power, who are the market leaders in renewable energy in India. Mr. Chaudhary is working on risk mitigation and arranging feasible insurance solutions to solar projects for more than 10 years now. The floor is yours, Mr. Chaudhary.
Yeah, thank you, Megha. Thank you, Isa, and the dignitaries for giving this opportunity to me to be part of this summit. So I would like to restrict to my area, like, whatever the topic given to me. So I'm going to talk about whatever I'm talking is from the perspective of an IPP. So I'm just going to share my slides. So are you able to see my slides?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So thank you once again. Renew Power, I'm working for Renew Power. Renew Power is the largest renewable energy company in India as of now. And we are in wind and solar, and around 5.5 gigawatt operational assets and another 5 gigawatt under development. Out of which, as of now, we have 2 gigawatt solar assets operational and another 2.5 gigawatt in pipeline. So we are very much, fortunate enough ensuring our projects as of now, because compared to the global markets, Indian insurance markets are very, very much soft and offering much broader coverage than what we get in a global market, except a few specific products which are not available in India. Otherwise, the general products very much, comprehensively available in India. And the pricing also very much reasonable till recent. Why I'm saying till recent means, last year, there is a big change in the premium ratings across the industry. So it really impacted even solar also. So the premiums have gone up by 2.5 to 3 times higher than the previous premiums for the operational projects. But the projects under construction is almost continuing with the lower premiums. So now I would like to talk about the risk management protocol in the solar industry. So this is all from my perspective, that being a IPP as a risk manager in IPP. So the major risks we pursue in the industry is AOG perils, because solar projects are spread across the hundreds of hectares, and almost every year one or other project is impacting due to the AOG act of God perils, like cyclones and heavy rains, windstorms and all. So that is the major risk I perceive, and there are other risks, physical risk, PDBI, property damage, and BI due to fire and accidental damages, and then weather risk. Weather risk, there is a loss of revenue. This is basically, irradiation is the main source of solar generation. Because of this climatic changes, there is a lot of volatility in the availability of sun irradiation, and that is impacting the generation. In turn, it is going to impact the revenues. So there are many other, like nowadays the solar industry is the IPPs are trying to grow in greenfield as well as brownfield. In brownfield projects, majorly when they go for the acquisition, there are a lot of risks associated with those acquisition. That is a major risk we perceive, and many other, like the recent pandemic and the directors' officers. And one more major thing is nowadays the trend has become we are seeing that the PPA cancellations or renegotiation of PPAs. Basically most of our PPAs, power purchase agreements, are with state discoms, and when the governments changes in that particular states, and those governments are trying to alter these PPAs in their favor, which is really not going to be a good sign. And this is also a big risk we are facing. And the off-taker risks, like the property damage, as well as property damage at off-taker premises, is impacting our we are able to generate, but they are not able to draw the power from us. That is really impacting our revenues. Certain extent, maybe AOG covers and Flexa covers are covered under the insurance policy. But yes, in case of any breakdown losses at off-taker premises, those are not covered. So that is going to seriously impact our revenue. And there is one more big challenge, is the curtailment. The curtailment is basically the off-taker is everything is fine at off-taker's end, but they don't draw the power. They put some restriction. They ask forcibly to reduce the our capacities, PLFs and all. So that is a big risk recently we are seeing. So there are some of the perils we are able to cover under insurance, like AOG, PDBI, and weather risk. Some extent but that is expensive again. Off-taker risk also, like, only PDBI, but curtailment is not covered. And merger and acquisition, yes, of course, we have a proper cover for that. Directors, officers, we have cover available. And there are some like, PPA cancellation or non-PD business interruption. These are all big challenge. We are not able to get the cover. And credit loss, basically recover receivables is also is a big challenge. So I'm just going to talk all those things in the next slide. So majorly the exposure in the industry, what I perceive in our industry is, the PPA race, where the PPA cancellations or renegotiation of the PPAs are really impacting IPPs, and there is no cover available for the same. And the recent pandemic is really an eye-opener for the entire world, where we have very, very limited, as just now John mentioned, the cover available is very, very limited and very expensive. And I tried to buy this cover, and I got an terms for only 1 million cover, which is not really going to a great support. And at a very expensive, very, very high cost. And receivables, yes, receivables, we supply the power to the, whether it's a private PPAs or PPAs with the state discounts, we supply on credit, and we are supposed to receive the money within 30 days after raising the invoice. But unfortunately, particularly from the state discounts, because of their bad shape, so they are not able to transfer the money to our accounts, and it is getting delayed, and a lot of pending receivables. That is really, impacting a lot of, financial burden on the IPPs, because, I have to, service the debt, charges, everything, but I don't get any interest from these discounts for the delay in their payments. So that is also becoming a increasingly a big risk. And then come to the, insolvency, the supplier's risk. The major risk is on account of modules. Modules we buy from the module manufacturers, and they offer the 25-year guarantee. But we don't know whether the same producer will be there still in business for the 25 years, maybe after 5-10 years, if the module performance impacts. So where I have to go. So there is a cover available, but it is very, very, partially available, and as well as very expensive. That is one of the major concern. Because as of now, everything is going fine, but after 5 years, suddenly if my project performance goes, drastically down, entire my economics will go out of mode. So then off-takers risk, again, I mentioned in my previous slides. So this off-takers risk, certain extent, this is very high exposure. And certain extent, we have coverage like, AOG and Fluxa covers in case of any damage to the assets at off-takers premises. But that is also a very limited cover, because we supply the power to the government substation. But if something goes wrong at that government substation, it's fine. If it is a AOG peril or a Fluxa, we'll get it. If it's a breakdown, we don't get anything. Insurer is not going to pay for that. There is no cover available. And beyond the government substation, the next level, if something goes wrong, if the off-taker is not able to draw the power, we are going to lose literally the money. And already I mentioned this curtailment, there is no cover available for the same. And one more thing, the transmission line cover, this is also, partially available, because the transmission network is the, key for, even I can generate the power I can take all precautions, I can try to cap all the risks, at my end, but I'm not sure what's going to happen to the transmission lines outside my premises. So for certain extent, we get some coverage, because insurance companies also, I don't think they are understanding the, complete what kind of risk and how can they can support to the industry. So this is also a big risk if it is, beyond the PSS or the GSS, if something goes wrong to the transmission line. So we have to suffer those losses here. So that is another big risk. And I was mentioning that, till recent, we have very, very, comfortable premium rates, and we were enjoying very good coverage as well as the premium rates. But suddenly, in last year, there is a increase in premiums by 3-folds, which is really unexpected. And all our projections based on the previous premiums, and now this 3-folds premium paying for the operational projects is a big risk. It is impacting on our economics, and I don't think there is a cover I can cover under any of the insurance, because it itself is an insurance premium, the increase. And then I don't know whether people are aware of this problem. Recently, we are facing a big challenge from the international lenders. They are insisting for the cover, insurance cover from the insurers and reinsurers who are having AM-based ratings A- and above. So actually, in particularly in Indian insurance market, I don't think many insurers having AM-based rating except 1, 2. So that too, the rating is less than A- AM-based rating. So that is really creating and I'm forced by the lenders to get the insurance cover from the global market, where the terms are totally different. The pricing is very high, and the deductibles, the policy excess is very, very high. So I'm really struggling a lot to this issue. But the lenders, we tried our best to convince them on the strength of the Indian insurance companies and the IRDA being a regulator, taking all the steps to protect the policy holders. So this is more than enough to feel secured by the lenders. So, but few lenders are very much adamant on this, and we are struggling a lot on this. So the impact of reliability and risk management factors on insurance premium, I'm just going to tell here, from the design part, yes, the design and construction, the policy is a matured policy available in Indian market, and the property damage and business interruption risks are very well much covered, and the cover availability or the premiums is fine. As of now, it is the soft pricing, and there is no much issue on this part. But yes, when it comes to operations, as I mentioned already, it is 2.5 to 3 times the premiums have gone up suddenly, and that is a real big blow for us. And there is no impact on the cover availability because cover there is no much change in the cover, and the cover aspect we are fine. And then comes to the supply solubility risk. As I mentioned, this modules, long-term performance is a big challenge, where the product is very expensive as well as the limited coverage, very, very limited coverage available for us, and that too at a very, very expensive, and the terms are not that great. So that is a big challenge for us in this aspect. And off-takers risk issue, I already mentioned. The credit where we are losing. The credit they are taking too much of time to settle the bill. That is impacting a lot on us, and the new trend of PPA renegotiation or cancellations and the curtailment. These are the major risks. And we don't have cover for this either. Not a great cover available for the PPA cancellations across the globe, I believe. So the curtailment, there nowhere this cover is available. So this is really a big thing. We have to look into it, and we are trying to find the alternate risk transfer solutions for these things. And the off-takers premises, damage that off-takers premises I already mentioned, and there is no cover available for the breakdown. So it comes to foreign exchange rate. Yeah, there is an impact, particularly while constructing the projects. But as far as insurance premium concerned, it is the cover is the premium impact is coverage impact is not there, but the premium impact is yes, some extent, and that is proportionately. So that is what more or less in these areas. Affordable insurance premium. Yes, some extent the premiums are affordable for the existing risk, but yes, there are gaps in the risk. So to get covered those things and to make it a foolproof, risk management, it is definitely may not be the affordable premiums. So, but being a risk manager, I'm looking at total cost of risk, not just insurance, because there are a lot of other things, other factors I have to consider while considering the total cost of risk. Because self-insured losses, claims beyond opted limits, and exposures like breakdown at off-takers premises, claims handling costs, and the insurance premium itself is a cost, and the policy deductibles and other risk mitigation expenses. These are all the costs add to the total cost of risk. I have to be careful in looking at insurance, that it is simply not the transferring the risk, each and every risk. I have to do the primary study on feasibility of transferring the risk, because there may be policy available, but at what cost, what kind of terms, and whether I'm able to bear the cost. So I have to keep in mind the TCOR while looking at the insurance covers. So that's all from my end. Thank you. Once again, thank you very much for the ISA and the Mr. Das for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to be part of this summit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chaudhary. Thank you for sharing with us the IPP perspective on risk management and comprehensive insight into challenges an IPP faces from various sides. Moving on, standardization of PV cells, PV modules, systems, balance of system components, and procurement of equipment for graded affordable insurance premium is critical for mitigating the risk for solar projects. I now call upon Professor N. Shiradkar from IIT Mumbai to discuss this topic. Mr. Shiradkar holds a PhD in electrical engineering from Florida State Solar Energy Center, University of Central Florida, USA. Before that, he earned BTech degree in electrical engineering and MTech in microelectronics electrical engineering from IIT Bombay. Mr. Narendra Shiradkar is currently working as an assistant professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Bombay. He also leads the PV Reliability Group of the National Center for Photovoltaic Research and Education at IIT Bombay. Welcome, Professor Shiradkar. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Megha, for the kind introduction. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So I would also like to thank ISA for giving me this opportunity to present in this meeting. I have slightly simplified the title of my talk. I'm going to talk about the PV module and system level standards for de-risking the PV investments. And here I'm specifically going to focus on the issues that may cause underperformance of the modules as well as underperformance of the plants and any risks that may arise because of that. Okay. So just a brief background about Ncpre and IIT Bombay, the organization I work for. As you may know, IIT Bombay is a leading institute in India. We were ranked #1 in QS ranking 2020, and the electrical engineering department is actually ranked in top 50 globally. Ncpre stands for National Center for Photovoltaic Research and Education, and it was set up by MNRE at IIT Bombay in 2010 when the National Solar Mission was launched. And so far, MNRE has supported us generously for last decade. Okay. And Ncpre has about 29 faculty members from 9 different departments at IIT Bombay, and over 150 students and staff are working at the center. You can get an idea about the breadth of the expertise that we may have at Ncpre from this. And there are several thrust areas of Ncpre, starting from thin films, new materials, to advanced silicon, industrial scale silicon cell fabrication, energy storage, power electronics, PV reliability, and we also have a fairly strong education and industry interaction trust. So even though we are a relatively new center as compared to some other institutes in the world, but we are widely recognized as one of the leading research institutes, especially in certain areas, okay, that has been set up in the solar PV. So let me tell you a brief, about the achievements of Ncpre. And the only reason I'm mentioning this is because I'll be talking about certain challenges that the solar industry is currently facing, and we do have expertise to address those kinds of things. So, for example, Mr. Das had mentioned about the All India surveys of PV module reliability that were carried out by Ncpre jointly with NICE, and we have done those 4 times so far. The 2020 survey was postponed due to the pandemic, and this is the largest data set of PV module degradation available in hot climatic zones. Okay, and I'll talk about the results from the survey in just one slide after this. We have had several other achievements as well. We have one startup coming out of Ncpre, which is a company that is making PV test instruments. They have already sold several systems globally. And in the international conferences, we have had a very vibrant presence with 11 oral presentations at IEEE PVSC and several invited talks at NREL PV Reliability Workshop. And we also represent in several standards making bodies such as IEC-TC 82 Working Group 2, which makes the international standards for photovoltaic modules, as well as the BIS CTD 28 and IEA PVPS Task Force 13, etc. And we also have several international projects, ongoing projects. I have just listed some ongoing projects. We have completed several others. And these are broadly in the area of quality and reliability of PV modules as well as systems. So before talking about the standards for de-risking, I'll talk about what is happening in field. Okay, so the question here is, how do you achieve low module degradation rates in Indian conditions? And even though I'm talking about Indian conditions, what I really mean is the hot climatic zones, which are fairly common in several of the ISA countries. So this figure here gives you a histogram of the degradation rates after discounting for LID, degradation rates that are observed in India in the All India Survey 2018. And just one, so it's a busy figure, but you can just look at this. The average degradation rate was about 1.47% per year. Now, for a 25-year life, the degradation rate of a module has to be around 0.7% per year. So you can see that this average number was actually quite high. And that is because of some modules on systems that were underperforming due to several reasons. Okay, but at the same time, you can see that there were several modules whose degradation rate was actually as expected, so less than 0.7% per year or so. So we tried to look at what is it that is causing these high degradation rates in some modules and how you can prevent it. So in this figure here, what you can see is the degradation rate per site as a function of the age. Okay, and as it was mentioned, we see that for some of these younger sites, okay, that are less than, let's say, 6-year-old, we have seen fairly high degradation rates. And one of the major reasons why we saw this high degradation rates was this red dots, which corresponds to something called as potential induced degradation. It's a type of failure mode that is there that can happen in modules that are subjected to high voltage stress. Now, thankfully, there is a standard available from IEC, and it is possible, at least in principle, to design modules that are not susceptible to PID. Okay, but that is standards. I mean, and what happens in field and in reality, that can be different, right? So this is what is highlighted by this figure. And in addition to PID, there were some other reasons such as cell cracks, which we had seen to be quite prominent, and hotspots, etc. Okay, so if those things are addressed, then it is possible to achieve lower degradation rates in hot climatic zones as well. But otherwise, what we have seen is that the degradation rates, when you segregate climate-wise, the degradation rates in hot climates are actually quite high as compared to the degradation rates in cold climates. And in fact, what we have seen is that if you look at the climatic zone, cold climatic zone of Leh and Ladakh, the degradation rates are fairly low. They are less than 0.7% per year or so, which is comparable to what people have been reporting in moderate climates in US and Europe, right? So that underlines the fact that if you're going to put up a lot of solar panels in harsh climatic zones or hot climatic zones across the world, you're probably going to need different kinds of qualification standards. And the existing standards, by the way, all of these modules that we have inspected, they were qualified through some kind of IC standard, right? But you're going to need newer standards in order to achieve this kind of 25-year life for solar panels in harsh climatic zones. Okay. Now I'll talk about some of the module level standards that are out there, which people have been using for assuring performance for a reasonably long period of time. So these two things that you see here, these are the two goals that any PV developer would have. One is, of course, you would want the PV plant to produce expected energy and revenue during the service life. And second is, you would want the degradation rates of the modules to be less than what is warranted. Right? Now, you may have this point 2 satisfied, but that may not naturally mean that 1 is also satisfied, because there are some issues that are system level issues, which are not related to panel degradation at all. And just by having a module warranty cover is not going to protect you against that. For example, I'll talk about one of the examples in my next slides, but anything that is related to soiling or staining on the panels or improper cleaning, or those kinds of problems that the module manufacturer may say that, well, these have happened because of some other thing, and the performance loss is not covered in this kind of case, right? Nevertheless, these standards, the IEC standards, have been very successful in improving the robustness and reliability of these modules since this PV technology has been used for terrestrial purposes. Okay, And particularly these two standards, the 61215 and 61730, these are mandatory requirements in majority of the mature markets. So module, if you're selling a utility scale module, the module has to be qualified by these two kinds of standards. The first set of standards has different accelerated tests which are necessary for module qualification, and second one is for module safety. And their purpose is to just ensure a bare minimum robustness of the modules as well as safety of the modules in end-use applications. Now, lately, because of the ubiquitous nature of potential induced degradation that was seen in several plants across the world, this new technical specification has also become very common, and the module manufacturers themselves certify their panels with this. This is not a mandatory one. This is still a technical specification. The first two are mandatory ones. But you would see that majority of the module manufacturers would say that they have certified their modules against the PID standard as well. Now, just by having these three, would it mean that your module is going to last for 25 years in field? No, unfortunately not. In fact, there is a significant effect of the microclimate in which you are putting the module on how the module is going to degrade and at what rate is it going to degrade. For example, and then in some cases, there are standards available to address those issues as well, right? So for modules that are deployed in coastal climates, they may get exposure, they may get exposed to salt and high humidity, and those things are taken care by the salt mist corrosion test. On the other hand, the modules that are deployed in farm and other places, those can be addressed. They get exposure. They get exposed to ammonia, okay, and the ammonia can cause significant amount of corrosion on the modules. So there is this ammonia corrosion test as well for those. There is something very recent that has happened in this module certification or module qualification business. There is a new technical specification that has come out from IC. This has been published in 2020, and we have played an important role in developing certain tests in this particular test specification. This is aimed at qualifying modules for high temperature end use environments. And by high temperature end use environments, I mean modules that are getting deployed in places such as deserts or in cases BIPV applications or on rooftops where there is no sufficient air circulation at the backside of the modules, etc. So this has a set of accelerated tests that are more robust. So if you're planning to put up modules in such high temperature environments, it would be a good idea to get them certified with this standard. But at present, I would be surprised if any manufacturer has certified their modules according to this, because this was just released few months ago. But going forward, this may be a good idea. One thing that we must remember is that all these standards at module level, they are useful to increase the confidence in the robustness of module designs, but they will not give you a guarantee that your PV plant is going to produce expected energy at during the service life, because there are so many other issues. And other thing that one must remember is that these are all design qualification standards. That means only a selected sample of modules are passed through certain accelerated tests. And if they pass, the module is given certificate that fine, your module passes this particular standard. If they fail, it's a fail, all right? It does not protect you from any kind of manufacturing related defects that may arise, or if there is intentional or unintentional change of bill of materials that may happen at a manufacturer's level. It doesn't, these kind of standards will not protect you against that. For that, you have to ensure that the bill of material is used in the manufacturing is same as the bill of material that is used during certification and so on. At the same time, there are some issues at the system level as well, which even if you have the best module possible, there are things at the system level that can go wrong, which can cause higher degradation. And I'll talk about them on this slide here. So these first few standards that have been published by IC that fairly recently, and these are actually, I would say, these are underutilized standards. Okay, so there are standards that talk about PV plant design, guidelines for designing a utility scale ground mounted PV plant, installation of plant, documentation, commissioning, as well as maintenance. Okay, so these standards are out there, but these standards don't involve any kind of accelerated tests. These are methodologies, right? So if your plant actually is conforming to these kinds of methodologies and standards, then you're mitigating the risk. But how do you ensure that it is actually happening? It's, for older plants, it's going to be difficult because these standards were not there at that point of time. And you may find that there is no sufficient documentation available. And that is going to be the case for older plants. But at least for newer plants, one could ensure that these standards are kept in mind from the design phase itself. So that you can down the line avoid any kind of surprises. And now there is a body called ICRE. They are coming up with this scheme for conformance assessment certification for PV plants. The earlier certifications that I talked about were at the module levels, but this is certification at the plant level. So in this scheme, there are third-party bodies and test labs. These test labs can actually certify solar plants, whether they follow these kinds of standards or not. So that is a further, or I would say, one step ahead in order to reduce the risk associated with different kinds of PV plant and the technical issues of underperformance that may happen. Now, irrespective of all this, there can be gaps in the standards, and you may still get high levels of degradation in field because of some reasons, right? So one is, now there are new kinds of PV modules and bills of materials that are coming in, and because of new module designs and so on, there are going to be new failure modes. And that is quite natural. But even for existing module designs, what we have seen is that there are some unique issues concerning quality and reliability in hot climates such as India, which would also be applicable to other ISA countries due to these kinds of issues that I have listed here, such as high temperature or hot climates, high soiling rates, scarcity of water, paucity of land, and there are harsh microclimates due to stressors such as pollutants in air or floods, cyclones, and things such as that. Transportation is also a key issue because the existing transportation standard assumes a certain level of vibration, but we have observed that on Indian roads, even the best Indian roads, the vibrations experienced by PV modules can be quite high, or higher than what is prescribed by the standard. So we need a new standard there. And of course, there can be some issues related to things such as wildlife, etc. So the point being, we need new standards that are pertinent to these conditions to fill the gaps. And on next slide, I'm going to talk about some of the avenues where it can be done. Well, before that, I'll just give you an example of what happens if you don't use an appropriate standard. So as you may know, PV modules are often cleaned by water. And so there is this choice, what kind of water you want to use in order to clean your solar panels. And if the plant is located remotely, you have to rely on some kind of bore well. So if you just use whatever water you have, you can get things such as this, where the coatings on the glass can react with the impurities in water, and then you have these permanent stains which can lead to hotspots as well. The other option is to just use whatever standard is available for water quality and ensure that your water quality conforms to that. The problem is the standard that we have is this BIS standard, which is for drinking water. So it has very stringent requirements on the impurities, etc. So in order to meet this standard, you have to put up a reverse osmosis plant, so which wastes a lot of water, which is not a very green solution, and it also requires a lot of energy and cost, etc. So this is kind of an example where PV specific standard for cleaning water can significantly benefit the industry. It can also save costs, and it can also save these kinds of issues from happening in field. So these are some of the areas that we have highlighted or identified for performing research that would lead to newer standards development. So this hot climate effect has been identified, and a new IC level standard has already been published. There are a few other things which we are actively working on, and such as the reliability evaluation of anti-soiling coatings. A lot of vendors are now coming up with anti-soiling coatings which claim to mitigate the soiling losses. The problem is many of these coatings, they don't last more than few months in field, and if you want to have a 25-year lifetime, that's going to be quite difficult. Then there are standards related to water quality and efficacy of robotic cleaning. Transportation, I already talked about. It's important to simulate the effect of transportation in realistic conditions. Cell cracks can be a big problem. We have been working on a test that can predict the worst case power loss from cell cracks, because we have seen that especially in rooftop plants, the cell cracks was one of the major reasons that we identified in 2016 All India survey that led to higher power degradation in rooftop PV plants. Okay? And there are a few other things such as IP rating for modules, because we had observed that some modules did undergo submersion when there was flooding at a PV plant, and they still survived. Okay, so there are some issues there. There are things such as bypass diodes in the modules that can also benefit from having more relevant and harsher tests. And of course, there are some soft things such as data management of PV power plants. Now, how do you use these things? These are not published standards yet, right? So this is at a research level. So even though that is the case, many test labs can offer these kinds of solutions or services. They can test the modules or components or systems according to these kinds of things, even before the IEC standard is published, because standards making is a significantly slow process. Okay, so you don't necessarily have to wait for the standard to come out. Sometimes there is reasonable confidence in these test methods that you can already start using. Now, with that, I would like to thank my group here. There are several faculty members in the PV reliability group, students and staff, and also MNRE for funding Ncpre. And I hope that by fixing and bridging these gaps in the existing standards, we can contribute towards de-risking the PV investments. So if you have any questions related to this, please feel free to email me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharadkar, for apprising our guests about Ncpre's PV quality and reliability activities and explaining in detail how standards can help in increasing reliability of modules. We are very privileged to announce that we have His Excellency Mr. Induced Chaturvedi, Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India, who has just now joined us. I would now request Secretary MNRE to kindly present the inaugural address.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for being late. I was in another VC, which we had not anticipated earlier. So this is the second Sun Meet that I am attending. And let me begin by saying what I had said the last time, that this is a very useful platform to deepen ISA's engagement with member countries and partner organizations. And therefore, it serves to strengthen the ISA. Accelerated deployment of solar energy is contingent upon a number of factors, and technology, availability of finance, the policy environment, they are of critical importance. Each of these factors has risks associated with it. For example, return on investment is an uncertainty. Technological underperformance, failure or obsolescence, and sudden changes in the policy environment. And thus there is a need for minimizing these risks while also protecting the interests of consumers. And there are a number of instruments that we use to manage these risks: payment security mechanisms, standardized technology protocols, mechanisms to enforce provisions for protection from changes in laws, and so on. Many of these elements are in common with those that are found in conventional energy systems, and they have been refined for quite some time. As far as RE projects are concerned, I think we are at relatively earlier stages of learning. One of the most important risks to the Indian solar energy projects is the counterparty credit risk, or the risk of power utilities delaying payments or defaulting on payments on payments which are contractually due. For projects bid out by MNRE's implementing agencies, this risk is covered by including a provision for payment to the developers by the intermediary procurers, which is the SECI, NTPC, or the NHPC, in case the distribution company falters in payment. The Government of India has also made it mandatory to open a revolving letter of credit for dispatch of power. In general, our competitive bidding guidelines under which intermediary procurers buy power, ensure standardization and uniformity of the procurement process, and thus a risk-sharing framework between the various stakeholders. This encourages investments and enhances bankability of projects. For ensuring technology performance, standards for deployment of solar photovoltaic systems and devices have been notified. However, much more needs to be done. For example, the bidding guidelines need to be re-looked at carefully, and we are in the process of doing this. Our present instruments should serve as building blocks for devising a comprehensive risk management plan or framework, which would allow for quantification of risks and help insurers and financiers devise products tailored to the requirement of solar energy projects. I think as far as the ISA is concerned, there is also the challenge of finding risk mitigating mechanisms for small projects, particularly that improve access in low-income countries. I'm happy to note that the ISA has chosen insurance of solar energy projects as the topic for today's discussion. The 17th September meet also focused on risks. And this reflects the importance the ISA attaches to this issue and the related issues. The ISA is best suited to initiate a global dialogue on risk mitigation and insurance. This will be critical for expanding the share of solar energy in future global energy mix. And I think it goes without saying that all member countries should contribute to this task and in general to strengthening the ISA. Let me end by complimenting the ISA Secretariat for organizing this virtual meet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. We have with us today Dr. O.S. Shastri, former Director General, National Institute of Solar Energy, India. I invite Dr. Shastri to discuss mechanical failure, test methodology, and diversification of module design type and affordable insurance premium for our guest.
Thank you, Megha, for that. And then very good afternoon to all the viewers. I'll just like to give you already somebody has spoken on the standards and the reliability aspects, but I will only concentrate on particularly the mechanical issues and the mechanical failures, part of it. I will show some slides and then can I share the screen, please? This is my presentation for the test methodology and diversification of module designs and type affordable for the affordable insurance premium. So the next slide is the reason for the occurrences of mechanical failures in photovoltaic modules. Various things are already discussed in that, but I only concentrate on particularly on the mechanical failures that are occurring in the fields. First of all, if you go by that, the selection of a BOM means bill of materials and fabrication process. This actually contributes a lot, which includes the selection of a superstrate, wafer thicknesses. Let me tell you, from the older modules to the newer modules, you must have observed that very recently somebody has pointed out that there are failures more in the newer modules. That means a very recent module. The reason is the wafer thicknesses have come down drastically, and these cells made out of these wafers are very fragile. They will break even with a simple shock or something. So one has to be very careful. And of course, other materials like EVA, Tedra, frame. And next is, of course, environmental stress, temperatures, and so on. What often happens is that we'll go by the standard 61215 that is, and what we required is perhaps a site-specific application of this standard that I will come and deal with you. And then the installation and handling and the transportation of this module. This is the one which actually gives rise to the major problems, in particularly in Asia Pacific region, or particularly in the countries, poorer countries where the roads and other things and not proper arrangements for the handling of this module is there. Wind and ice deposition, although in some of India, there is not much of it except in the Ladakh region, but this ice actually creates a lot of stresses, mechanical loads on the modules. And of course, the wind will show. I will show you some of the actually slides which is impacting the wind. And then of course the vandalism, stones, hailstorms and other things. This also gives rise to the breakages in the modules, which actually really fails the module output. The natural calamities like cyclones, fire accidents, earthquakes, etc. These are some of the various reasons why this module mechanically failed. The next slide is what is the effect of these mechanical failures? First, the performance reduction, which means the energy yields and the PR ratings will go down drastically. And this is a very important thing because you will not give the warranties are not maintained, and then the PPAs are not maintained because you are not producing enough, you are not feeding enough, and then you don't get it. So the next is safety failure. This is very important. If a module actually cracks or if there is a breakage in the module and some of the live parts of the module are exposed, and this will be a serious safety issues for the personnel who are working on it. Apart from this, breakage of the module creates some other issues. And the reduction of the performance life, like somebody else, my previous, the speaker has pointed out, 25 years of the life. In fact, the reduction, this is based on the particular testing of 61215. For the life, we will predict 25 years. But whenever you have this side of effects, safety failures or something, the life of the module reduces drastically. And then one has to see in what, in the context, how much is the life still left. So because of this, warranties and guarantees, service contracts, they will not hold good. This is what is the impact of this failure in the modules. Next, like I said, the selection of a BOM and fabrication process, if I go for that, you can see the modules, actually, we will go by whatever the modules. This is one standard that we will follow, 612 design qualification. Well, they do the design qualification, and the second standard is 61730. This is a BOM. BOM means bill of materials requirement. So this, both the standards, while the people say, but there are other aspects to it, because whenever you change the bill of materials, certain test has to be done. One has to be very careful in identifying whether the manufacturer really adopting or really adhering to these particular things or not. Otherwise, you must have seen in the certification of the modules, they will give you the additional design, additional models also certified. During that additional model, that means the extension of the certification, they actually don't test the other models. This is only an extension of that. You must be very careful when you are doing so, because these modules, these models are not actually tested. So in that case, you must see whether these modules are tested to that adequate. And then whenever you buy such modules, you may initiate on your own some of the testing, some of the design qualification tests. May not be all. Okay. So for that purpose, the factory inspection is the most important thing. So whether the factory is really using the materials that are actually certified, that, and then they are using the real certification process, the process that is the design qualification process under your hand. So the next, what happens if you have an installation problem, this is what you are going to see it. Number one, proper leveling, whether it is a rooftop or is a ground mounted module, first proper leveling. Then the structures, see, all the way we always say the structures have to withstand 250 kilometers per hour wind loads and other things. But so far, very, very few structures are actually tested for this. I understand that they only do the simulation studies, and through which they will say they qualify the module. It's not really, simulation studies really not really give a good answer for this, but you have to see a proper installation, and the proper selection of a structure material, technique of installation, and methods. These should be based on the site to site. That means whether it's a rooftop or a ground mounted, whether it's a coastal area, whether it's a cyclone prone area, you must see that. Otherwise, what you're going to see is this type of destruction in the modules after installation, which causes a lot of damage, and then of course loss of insurance. And then transportation. So far, we have not really seen this particular standard is adopted by the most of the countries and other things. This is a very important standard. If you look at the I-13 IEA PVPS task, what this says, 38.5% of the actual some of the failures account for the shipping packaging damage. That means we are not really this could be because of the various issues that are during the transportation breakage and everything. Just let me show you some slide. Look at the way the mishaps that happens during the transportation, and the module. This is the style of thing in some of those the developing or some of the developing countries that you have the module will actually break, and then you can see the module packing structures, and then the module the pelleting, all those things. So these are how to be tested as per this. There is a particular standard which is developed by IEC 62759. This is for specifically for transportation module. So if you are really going for a megawatt scale or a gigawatt scale power plant, ensure that this particular standard is adopted, and this is tested module and a package as a union. Kindly remember, this is not specifically only to the module, it is for a package, it's a pelleting. So the sequence and the style of testing and everything is given. I just not want to go to that because there's time constraint and other thing. Now let us see the effect of the wind and ice, because these are all already addressed in one of those standards, that is 61215, one of the particular tests, but this may not be adequate because of the site conditions and other things. So there is another standard that has come out of IEC TS 62782. This is specifically for thermal cycling and other things. Here, see the wind gas effect that we can see that by applying this this type of mechanical load test. This is specific for the wind test. That means this is a cycle test. Actually, this goes about 1,000 cycles or beyond that and the thing. So you apply a positive and negative pressures on the module, both sides, and I will show you in subsequent slides how this is applied, and see whether the module is really undergoing any cracks or any development of any micro cracks or anything. So some of the slides I will show you about this. So this is called a dynamic mechanical load test. There is another test which is called a static mechanical load test, where this is for the ice loads. So the various sequence of the tests that have been done, 1,000 cycles, 1,000 pascals pressure. Okay, this goes up to 3 to 4 cycles per minute, and it's continued till 1,000 cycles. Or if you have a very high wind prone area, you can go even beyond to this, see whether this module still intact and does not develop any micro cracks or anything. Next, this is for the ice loads, which is called snow effect. Although in some of the countries where you have a lot of ice precipitations on the module, particularly in Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh regions and other things, this particular test is a must. Here we apply a static pressure of 5,400 pascals, or even increase the slightly higher pressure, and see whether there are any such effects of micro cracks that's happening on this. Next, this is what the cycles that we are going for the snow loads. It's a very slow test, and then you can do it for the required number of cycles. You can go for 50 cycles, or you can go for 100 cycles, or even more beyond that. This is a particular typical equipment setup that actually tests the mechanical load test. That is what happens in this. You apply a certain pressure, whether using there is a pressure gauges, you can set it out of that, and you can use this. This is come out as a technical specifications released in the latest standards of 2016. So this test is a must for the modules which are going to be used in the wind prone areas. And now, can you just see the way when you do this test, you can see how these micro cracks are created. Here I'm using an EL camera with, of course, IV and other thing. So as the module goes, the cycling of the wind, you can see the micro cracks develop, and this number of cracks that are developed increases based on the pressure applied and the cycle as a one. So this is, I will come back to you, the type of test that we can perform on this. using the EL camera and IR camera and other things. So this is one of the tests that we look forward that for any module that are going to be installed in the field, particularly in the wind prone areas. And you can see that there we can go up to 750 cycles, in some cases the 1000 cycles. And if your wind loads, you can choose. This is specific to your site condition. Either you can choose 1000 pascals or you can choose 2400 pascals. So this is how the power loss is actually monitored and shown here. There are other failure effects which I just wanted to touch upon. These include the impact of the stones, of course, like golf balls or hailstorms and other things. This is a very specific pattern that it created, because at the center where the impact point, and then it is spreads like the sun rays and other thing, this whole, and this is the type of defects which are very, very safety disastrous. That means if somebody puts a water on this, then can be a good electrical shock to the person who. So such modules have to be removed immediately, and if there is such things are observed and everything. Another type of, for this particular hail test, for this particular effect, one has to do actually the hail test, which is a setup that we have created at NICE. This is where the ice ball will give the impact of the required momentum, and it impacts, and then see whether the module is still intact, and then that is creating any degradation in the power output, or is there effects under that. Yeah. There is another burning of this part. This is although directly to the mechanical. So if you have a burning spots, this could be because of some blocking diodes or the bypass diodes, and then it could rise to a big flare or during the thing, and then the front side of the module doesn't look anything, but you can see what happens after the fire and the disaster. So this is another risk for the persons who actually work with this module for the cleaning and other thing. One more thing that we do with I'm just trying to point out what are the bad cleaning and maintenance practices of the module. Why am I saying these are all the points that gives rise to the failures? I'm talking mainly mechanically. A person standing on the structure of a module, it can be disastrous. He is trying to create a number of micro cracks, and which eventually going to kill the module and the entire structure of entire module string at all. So now another way of cleaning is people try to clean during the sunny hours of a day. During the sunny hours of a day, if you try to clean a module, it also creates a temperature variations and also creates a hot spots, which eventually degrade the module a lot. So some of these the maintenance and cleaning aspects to be taken care of, particularly when you are working with these modules. Now, what are the techniques that are available to identify the failures of the module? If in a power plant, if the module is failure, what are the techniques that one would use it? Whether some of the failures are not visible to the naked eye, so one has to go for this. So electroluminescence is one of the best techniques that have been used for identifying the micro cracks and of course and other failures. This is generally used for with all type of effects, the mechanical loading, static test, and all sort of effects. So I would suggest, if you wanted to build up a very good power plant in a particular site, kindly take a setup, or nowadays this is a mobile vans are available. Mobile testing vans are available. Keep a mobile testing van at the site and inspect at least 1 or 2% of the modules that are actually being installed just before installation on the structures. Check the electroluminescence. You will find it doesn't take much time. It takes a fraction of a second or a few seconds. But it will give you a very useful information that the module is eventually going to fail in the coming years. That will tell you if you have more micro cracks, it is and this is going to fail. And then of course, infrared thermal imaging will tell you where the hot spots are there, where the module is going to be failed, and eventually because of the high currents and the other loads, very high currents and other load problems. And then the IV measurements in the site. This is possible. You can using some sort of array testers and then the mobile platforms. It will tell you, it will give you almost a lab environment and STC. You can see how much is the degradation in the modules and why is the degradation, and you can see the string wise or inverter level, and at any various levels you can just check monitor the performance of the module. This is very important because it will give rise to you the idea whether the power plant that you are inspecting is going to last for a long or is going to close down, or because it is losing its the performance, or its degradation rates are very high. So that's why I said a regular monitoring through SCADA is most important to maintain the modules, so that under any other defects that are going to generate should be mitigated or should be observed, and then the modules should be mitigated. Carefully following the regular inspection tests. I'm telling you when I say careful, really carefully, inspection, this particular standard 62246 actually tells you how to inspect the documents, how the standard, how the power plant is created. It's a sort of whole history of a power plant in the form of a standard that I have given. So it has two parts of it. One is the documentation inspection, other is a regular inspection of the field power plant, also the monitoring of the SCADA data. With this, if you apply all these techniques and other thing, next thing is now how to mitigate the risk in the mechanical failure. First is a selection and certification. Always select a module which is certified, and particularly to the latest standards, and particularly site specific conditions. If your site is somewhere in Ladakh, don't try to choose the conditions or the standards that are for Rajasthan or a desert. And this often happens because most of the people thinks that 61215 is the general standard and everything can be done. But there are certain tests which are involved in the 61215 and which are not really useful for a Rajasthan type of desert. That is why the new standard for a high temperature standard has been created. In fact, this is some of the details were given by us during the All India survey. I'm also a part of the All India survey team and other things. So next, on-site checks using EL, IV, IR, HIPOT test, verification of the quality before the installation. This is the most important thing. If you do it, at least 50% of your risks are covered, or you are removing at the initial stages itself. So that, and then regularly follow the inspection test as per the IEC 612 standard. This would give you a good health. This will maintain the health of a power plant much better by following this particular standard. And then you get this warranty and service contracts that can be implementable. Otherwise, there could be one failure or other, particularly with reference to the mechanicals. So it will create a problem. I think that's the end of my talk. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for kind attention.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this immersive presentation and very, very useful information. I would now request Mr. Scott Jeswinski, Business Development Manager, UL USA. Mr. Jeswinski will throw light on reliability and risk management protocols in PV power plants. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen here?
Yes, please.
Yes. Thank you for the kind introduction and the invitation to speak with you all today. I'm going to be talking to you about reliability and risk management protocols in PV power plants. There will be some repeat and discussion of the standards here, but I'll be talking to you about how we bring that together in a protocol and a qualification system at the end. As is customary, I'll say a few words about our company, Underwriters Labs. We're best known as a safety science company, and for our involvement in testing and certification of products and for our standards development. However, we're also very much—
The screen is not visible, Megha. You have a slide, something to show? That's not there.
I am.
Vimal, could somebody upload?
Sure.
Yes, upload, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Perhaps I did
No,
not.
it was not your, actually, Mega tool, it is visible. So,
Yeah, sorry, sir. I thought that the
Can we see it now?
no, not yet.
no, not yet.
Yes.
Yeah, it is there now.
There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. So let's see, where was I? Right here. Okay. So I'm talking about Underwriters Labs as a safety science company and for our involvement in testing, certification, and our standards development. And we're also known for and involved with renewable energy testing and certification of products, and also independent engineering services for wind and PV projects. So here's an infographic, just point out a few things here. We have over 500 renewable energy experts, and we've been involved in over 600 wind and solar projects since 2012. So a few key points, takeaways from here. And I'm going to talk about risk and risk evaluation. There are a lot of definitions for about risk and risk evaluation. Here's a nice one. But basically, it's assessing the likelihood of something bad happening. And the graph to the right is the more interesting discussion. And that is, it shows when the best opportunity is to assess that risk. And no surprise, it's early on during the planning and design phase of the project life cycle. And that is because there's much more opportunity to do that evaluation, perform that evaluation, and discover those possibilities of defects being introduced, for example, in a design. And of course, as time passes over that project lifetime, it gets much more costly to identify and remove or plan to remove those risks or defects in a project. So risk assessment early on is very important. Just developing some more context here when we talk about PV plants. This is what we're talking about. This shows the basic elements, the DC array and the PV modules off to the right here, connected by these DC current carrying wires into an inverter. We see some switchgear here. We see a transformer. This particular project has storage associated with it. And projects have a SCADA or monitoring system associated with them as well. And as I said earlier on, I'm going to be talking about PV modules in particular, largely because they make up 30 to 40% of the initial cost or the CapEx of a project. And also simply because of the volume and the area that they cover in a PV plant and the exposure that they have to the environmental stressors, for example. So with focus on PV modules, I'm going to begin that conversation with these well-known stages of PV project development, planning and design, and engineering, construction and commissioning, and eventually the in-service operation of the plant. And again, coming back to the front end of this first phase, which is where the best opportunity is to do the risk assessment, we generally look at these broad categories. This first grouping here basically has to do with the supply chain. For the products or equipment that go into the project, also for your contractors, looking at their experience, their capabilities associated with PV plants. A second grouping here has to do with the documents, contracts, permits, and making sure all these are in order. And lastly, the technical feasibility of the project, the energy yield, the potential for energy production at that site, the design, feasibility of the design, and geotechnical analysis and so forth. But again, I'm going to bring us back to the supply chain and the manufacturer and the PV module. Once we get, and just pointing out that once all things are in order in the planning and design phase, then financing can be released. When we talk about PV modules, we're generally speaking about, or traditionally have spoken about, 60 and 72 cell PV modules. These are well-established technologies, commercially available for over a decade now. And however, though, with this constant market pressure to increase efficiency and lower costs, we've been seeing a steady stream of new technologies coming through our labs. So manufacturers are constantly updating their designs to take advantage of the innovation in technology in order to stay competitive. And there's a diverse array of materials and manufacturing technologies that keep UL vigilant in our standards updates to address these changes, some of which are, for example, half-cut cells, and we're starting to see larger cell sizes and a variety of changes in the bill of material, many of which you see here. So wafer types, the cell technology, PERC is for the last 3 years, we've seen the introduction of PERC technology. Heterojunction is well on its way, and tandem cells are far in the future. The number of bus bars is increasing, or bus bar less. Cell interconnection materials, encapsulant materials, backsheet materials, especially with bifacial modules, we're seeing transparent backsheets, front cover and back cover combinations of glass and foil, again, back to the bifacial modules. Cell dimensions, the cells are getting much bigger now as we see these 600-watt modules coming into market. Frame materials, thickness of the front glass. We heard earlier that the thickness of the front glass is being reduced, especially with bifacial modules, just to reduce the weight of it. But as you introduce, as the glass becomes thinner, that introduces problems in itself. Cell interconnections and production process tools are changing as well. So this is what is representative of what we heard earlier on as the bill of material. And many combinations of these things are changing in the PV module. So we must remain diligent in the evaluation of these technologies. And when that's done is early on in the planning and design phase. That's when the technology selection is made. So if we have a look at the economic analysis here, we ought to consider the stakeholders in this PV plant project. And they're the financiers, the developers, owners, EPCs, asset managers, manufacturers. And these are the folks that take on the risk for this project. So once that risk is identified, it's allocated and allocated across these stakeholders. That risk that can't be taken on is underwritten and insured. And in these projects, these are revenue generating assets. So in these projects, the key value metrics are NPV, net present value, internal rate of return, LCOE. So these become the common metrics when we're looking at projects like this. And as I say, these are revenue generating assets. With those metrics is involved a pro forma. And if we were to graph what that looked like over, for example, a 30-year power production, or a PPA, or a feed-in tariff of 30 years, we might get this model. Now, this is an ideal model for illustration purposes only, but we see we see revenue generated, we see the O&M costs here, we see the EBITDA in green. And again, this is an ideal model. And you might ask the question, why does the line slope like that? And that is because it's well known that PV modules have about 0.5% degradation per year. And that is very much dependent on the PV module manufacturer. We often hear of tier 1, tier 2 module manufacturers. So this degradation rate is very much dependent on the PV module manufacturer, the technologies and the bill of materials, for example. And we want to be assured and have confidence in that technology selection, because if something other than a 0.5% degradation per year happens and at a different rate, this economic model is broken, and that payback is pushed out much further, and the project is maybe abandoned, quite frankly, and some have. So this is very important aspect, is the PV module, the technology, and the manufacturing. So let's get into that a bit. I'm going to come back to the PV module test reports and the diligence involved there, and say a bit more about building confidence in these PV modules, in the context of these phases of development. We heard earlier a little bit about factory inspections, and why that is important is because a factory of a 300 megawatt project could require a manufacturer to be producing modules for 1 year. So that factory is running continuously almost for 1 year, producing hundreds of thousands of modules. And the quality system of that factory and the consistency with which those modules come out of that factory is very important. Another aspect of building confidence and assuring quality out of that factory is statistical batch testing. Now, this is often applied to manufacturers that aren't as reputable or well-known, other than tier 1, for example. And a lot of tier 1 manufacturers do statistical batch testing as well. So this is a sampling during production. Some testing is usually involved, and there's a comparative analysis to some baseline that was established prior to production. We heard a little bit about on-site evaluation too, to ensure the integrity of the modules throughout transportation. This is an evaluation of packaging and whether they made it onto the site all right. And we also heard a little bit about plant inspection in reference to standard 62446. Now, this is an inspection of those modules in the plant. And we also heard about a standard 62759 and the evaluation and operational performance of those PV modules. This is all in the context of the DC array in those PV modules and assuring their performance and operation. So I'm going to take you back to the PV module testing and the test reports themselves. And at UL, we look at testing this way, and that is there are different types of testing, and each of them have a purpose. As I said earlier, UL is well known for its safety science and safety certifications. So this is step 1. And what does that mean? So it demonstrates that if a PV module were to fail, it fails in a safe way. So it demonstrates non-hazardous failure conditions. And the well-known standards here are the 61730. And UL has recently harmonized our 1703 with 61730. So the new safety standard is UL 61730. It's harmonized with the IEC. And you can see other standards for other countries, regions, based on the 61730, and they generally include what's called a national difference associated with that country. The next step is quality. I spoke about that earlier, and that is consistency in production. That 100,000 module coming off the production line needs to look exactly like the first batch that came off the line, and that's important. Consistency across the DC array and modules matching in a string are very important when it comes to energy production. There's a standard for PV modules and assuring quality in production, and that's IEC 62941. This is also part of the IECRE, which I heard made reference to earlier. The next step is performance, and what's meant by performance is achieving standard test conditions. Standard test conditions, that's important, so that manufacturers' products can be measured against each other, if you will, sort of benchmarking one against the other. I have a long list of standards by purpose and function listed below here, as opposed to standard numbers, simply because they're so long. But you'll recognize things like PAN file. It contains attributes of the PV module over temperature and a radiance level. This is used for energy yield simulations in a tool called PVSys. That's what's meant by a PAN file. IAM LID, LETID, is a new phenomenon, light and elevated temperature induced degradation. PID, we heard made reference to dynamic mechanical load, corrosion, abrasion, and dust. These are what we refer to as performance standards. So moving on to durability. Durability testing is evaluating the product to perform under stress conditions. So this is beyond standard test conditions. These are stress conditions. And we heard reference to a standard earlier about high temps. That's, for example, is a stress condition. This is standards based as well, durability testing. And the key tests here are temperature cycling, humidity freeze, damp heat, dynamic mechanical load, and UV exposure as well. And so not only these particular exposures alone, but also sequences of these, because that is reality in the field. You have wind, you have change in temperature, you have humidity changes, and so on and so forth. And these sequences can be, some of these sequences based on a lot of national lab studies can be found in this IEC standard technical specification 63209, which is not published yet, but and will be out for draft in December of this year. And lastly, we see reliability. Now, reliability is, we often hear about reliability. So what does that mean? Reliability introduces this, this factor of time. So this is performance over the lifetime of the system as expected. So, and there is no standard for reliability. And the best practice that's available and used often is identified here at this high level, which includes safety, performance, and durability. Basically, these three steps that I just spoke about. There's the factory inspection, there's the batch testing, the in-production evaluation of modules. There's the on-site evaluation, that is as received of the modules. There's the plant inspection. These are system level evaluations. These are modules installed in the system. And then the operational performance. So a combination of all these comprise a best practice that give you an indication of reliability of that DC array. And UL offers these testing services in a stacked value approach in bundled services, starting with the primary reference standards, which we've heard referenced to quite a bit today, 61730, 61215. And these provide a record of test. And then it's upon that we can build with some certification evaluation and for certification for different markets. For example, safety certification in North America, for North America, gives you the UL mark on the product. And you can get access to other markets by testing to those national differences specific to those markets. And then on top of that, we add the performance testing, which I just spoke of, that long list of standards and testing. And on top of that, durability. And there's efficiencies in bundling them this way because, for example, some testing has been done earlier and can be leveraged across all this temperature cycling. For example, TC 200 for durability testing, a TC 600 is often required. So with this approach, the bundled services, there's a cost savings and efficiency and savings in time as well. So, and there's some interim reports delivered. So if you're a project developer or if you're providing modules for a project or other stakeholders, you can provide these interim reports and inform them on status of, if you're a manufacturer, status of your module. So summary and takeaway here for insurers are that successful risk management practices continue to be important to ensure investor confidence into these new and innovative PV module technologies. And technical diligence is informed by testing based on standards and recommended when transferring plants to insurance. So with that, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Yes, I now invite Global Head. I request all the speakers to kindly mute their mic, please. Thank you so much. I now invite Mr. Ncpre, Global Head Clean Energy Aerial RE, to present their view on long-term performance insurance and impact of quality and standardization on solar projects. Jan developed the insurance market for renewable energy performance warranties since 2009. After heading Munich RE's APAC renewable energy unit since 2015, Jan leads Aerial RE's clean energy practice specialized in a wide range of performance guarantee solutions for utility scale and CNI portfolios of solar, waste to energy and storage projects. Jan is a trained theoretical physicist and holds an MBA in insurance and risk management. Over to Mr. Jan, please.
Thank you very much, Mega, and thanks everybody for having me at this 29th summit. Should I share screen the slides or will you put them up?
Go ahead, Jan. You can share it.
Okay. Fine. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Brief introduction to Aerial RE, or as we say, Aerial RE, which stands for reinsurance and not for renewable energy. Aerial RE is one of the Lloyd's of London syndicates, and combined creates an oldest insurance and reinsurance market. So Lloyd's has been founded roughly 340 years ago as a mutual of shipping companies in London. The clean energy team, which I'm heading at Aerial Syndicate of Lloyd's, is specialized in developing, underwriting of long-term performance guarantees for the wider clean energy sector. And when we relate to clean energy, we underwrite and insure both energy generating technologies and projects, but also energy saving technologies and projects. For the purpose of the ISA, since we talk about solar, I've just highlighted at the bottom two numbers which show you our track record in ensuring solar module performance guarantees and also offering very bespoke production, so kilowatt hour guarantees or performance ratio PR guarantees to different players across the value chain of the solar sector. Since Yash and from Andviti and Jan from IFC had been talking about the hardening insurance markets in the past, I think it's important here to add and explain that we are a fully integrated insurer and reinsurer at Lloyd's. So we do develop the products which we intend to write. We analyze the risks ourselves. We price the risks. We develop insurance policies. We issue insurance policies. We insure and reinsure the risks ourselves, and we also manage claims ourselves. And this picture is a very high-level view of what we call, or how we distinguish between so-called traditional and non-traditional insurance products. Basically, you can assume that with traditional, we refer to so-called physical damage policies, and these are all those risks about which Jan Mormenthaler was talking previously. The non-traditional insurance products are usually those products which are more bespoke and don't really have certain insurance markets for it. So there may be a handful of insurers or reinsurers who would be developing those products, and probably those products would look quite different in terms of its scope and also pricing from one insurer to another, simply because they don't follow certain reinsurance market standards. So if we look at the timeline of a project, let's skip the planning phase for now. But if we look at the let's say the engineering, the procurement, and the construction of the project, this is where so Jan was talking about and Yasha was talking about the constructional risks, erectional risk policies, which are particularly covering the construction phase of the project before the commissioning of the project. And then all forms of physical damage, force majeure covers, which are available and has to be taken up by any project for both the construction, but also the post-commissioning, which is the operational period of the project. And talking about the hardening insurance market, so limiting covers in scope, increasing the deductibles, increasing premiums. When we talk about the hardening market, as Jan has outlined and underlined, it really refers primarily to all the physical damage PD policies. Why is that the case? That's primarily driven by the fact that reinsurers who take a vast majority of the risks, it's not the primary insurance companies which issue the policies who mostly take the risks. It's the reinsurance companies have just experienced extremely bad performance, especially in the last years, and are forced to increase rates to make up for the losses. Now, when we talk about the non-traditional insurance products, as I said, they don't follow certain specific markets, and the risks are being underwritten in a different way, in a very bespoke way. So when we look at the physical damage, the traditional insurance risks, the pricing of the policies is typically based on the historical performance of the policies in the past. Whereas the non-traditional insurance policies, they are usually underwritten on a prospective basis. And this is also the case with our long-term performance insurance policies at Ariel Re, where we specialize in what we call prospective underwriting. So we don't only look at historical performance. Of course, we take historical performance into account, but we analyze the risks from a technical engineering point of view. and we run certain Monte Carlo simulations to establish our view of risk, how we expect that the risk could develop over the next 5, 10, 15, or 25 years. So the planning phase of each project becomes actually a major part of our underwriting, because we need to verify what assumptions are taken into account when planning the engineering and procuring the balance of the system, in order to establish the expected production in terms of megawatt hours of the system for the next 5, 10, 15, up to 20 years. Talking about, maybe taking a second to talk about the professional indemnity insurance, about which Yash was talking. He was talking about the significantly increasing rates for professional indemnity. It's a very good example of a traditionally actually insurance policy which was adapted to the need of the solar industry. So if we look at the solar industry being a relatively young industry from an insurer's point of view, the professional indemnity policy is a policy which has been in place for decades and has been covering liabilities arising out of not fulfillment of certain requirements by certain professions, right? So it goes back to various other professions than just EPC or O&M companies, to which those policies now more and more often apply in the solar sector. Now, this means that a professional indemnity policy for an EPC company will have basically more or less the same insurance wording and scope of cover as it would have for any other profession. And that's not very efficient, because you want to make sure that if the professional indemnity policy is supposed to cover certain liabilities arising out of an EPC guarantee or an operation and maintenance guarantee, you want to make sure that you have a bespoke product which is addressing those risks, and not the general insurance policy, which on the one hand is using a general wording applying to all professions, and on the other hand is following a hardening traditional insurance market, because those policies for those other professions in the past have been performing very badly. So we provide a wider in scope and more bespoke alternative to what one could see professional indemnity policies, but we like calling it long-term performance insurance or revenue shortfall insurance because of the wider scope. And this slide shows you the scope of the cover, which includes the irradiance risk. So we may call it excessive clouding. Essentially, it's covering the increased volatility of irradiance. And then it covers the performance ratio of the project, which is a very difficult term technically, and I don't want to go into technical details on how performance ratio is defined, because we see really a very wide range of performance ratio definitions across different EPC and O&M contracts. But generally speaking, it covers the component availability. It covers component performance, so a component may be available but not performing as expected. It's covering various system design losses. This also includes wrongly made projections when it comes to the long-term performance or energy generation of the system. So for example, faulty assumptions when you just simply use a PV system. And it could also cover specific O&M related losses. One of them, which was mentioned before in the presentation of Dr. Shiratkar, were soiling losses. So soiling, for some projects which are insuring, soiling is not even an issue because it barely exists. But for other projects, soiling is a major issue and has a very large amount of volatility around soiling from one year to another year. And then we would require the insured to perform specific soiling assessments for us to take this into consideration and include excessive soiling into our policies. As a result, the goal is to provide a comprehensive yield megawatt hour production guarantee. And then if you compensate that energy production by a tariff, now I don't want to get here into the discussion whether this tariff is fixed or whether it's a fixed PPA, or whether it's a fixed feed-in tariff, or whether it's a merchant's compensation. At the end, you get to the revenues. And the goal is to protect the operational cash flows from solar assets, which are protecting and are being used to pay down debt service. So looking at this slide, we are looking at, if we take out all the traditional physical damage risks, you're looking at a very comprehensive risk landscape of credit, starting with credit risks related to the offtake, to weather risks, to pure technology, but also let's call it wider professional indemnity risks related to design and O&M, as well as all the supplier risks. Now, in the perfect world, if you take out the irradiance and you just focus on the performance ratio, you would say, I don't worry about O&M losses. I don't worry about design losses because I have an EPC guarantee. I have an O&M guarantee. And I don't worry about component performance because I have my supplier's warranty. The problem in the financial world with those warranties is only that all of those warranties, and I don't think there is an exception in the market, maybe one or two, are not investment grade, so cannot be treated by the credit committees of financial institutions in a way which allows them to finance projects to a certain extent they would like to finance at a certain cost you would like them to be financed. So our goal is to really provide a comprehensive wrap around all those underlying warranties with an investment grade insurance product, and in this way to create an investment grade floor on the operational cash flows of the project. We have projects where we have insured insolvency of PPAs. It was mentioned before by Renew Power that, for example, country risks, so government PPAs are not insurable. Yeah, I mean they are vastly not insurable, but close to or sub-investment grade PPAs could be potentially insured and combined into a wider so-called revenue pool. Now, this is the scope. And the slide here shows basically how a revenue shortfall cover or a production shortfall cover works, where we have to talk about the severity of the cover and what is it really that we are trying to achieve by structuring such an insurance policy. So the light blue line is the expected energy yield, and we have agreed with the project that this is the expected energy production which the project would generate over the years. It does degrade. And then the orange line is, for example, the insured amount of energy production. What is covered in terms of scope we discussed in the previous slide here is really only about understanding how high, how close, or how far away from the expected energy production do we want to fix the insured energy level. And this really depends on what is the objective of the insurance. If the owner of the project is funding the project out of its own equity, he probably wants to have the insured level as high as possible to take out any volatility in the revenues of the project. This obviously is expensive. The closer you get with the insured level to the expected energy production, the more pricey is the insurance, because you are at some point you start swapping cash with the insured. So it's all about if we really want to achieve affordable insurance premiums, it's all about, in terms of the long-term performance guarantees, to find a level which is really addressing concerns of those who provide you with the funding. So in the 5 gigawatt of experiences which we have made, most of the projects were project financed, and we have relied on defining this amount of insured energy production by following the requirements from the lenders. And now, if we talk about the general ISA setup and the goals which want to be achieved, this cannot be done on a high level. It probably cannot be done on a national level. It may be done maybe on a lenders or funding providers level, but it definitely can be done on a regional level, because the level of the energy production which we are ensuring will define the amount of cash flows which we are ensuring. So we want to make sure that the cash flows are insured are high enough to, for example, protect the entire risk of the bank in the venture. The red areas here, just to add, is just an example of claims. So we could look at a small claim in year 3, which could potentially be like a higher irradiance, or sorry, lower irradiance, resulting in lower energy production. It could be a failure of a few inverters which have been replaced, resulting in a quite small revenue shortfall. But then in year 5, you will have an example of a big catastrophic event where, for example, 10-20% of modules in the project have backsheet failures. They fail completely. They should be replaced under the warranty from the supplier, but the supplier is not around. And in this case, there is a resulting loss in revenue in each of the following years until the end of the policy in this example in year 10, right? So, of course, the project owner is losing revenues here as well, but the insurer is paying the lost revenues below the orange level. But the insurance here would not force the project owner to replace the modules if the manufacturer was out of business and was not honoring its warranty obligations. So, having talked about scope and also the amount of coverage, this is the last slide, which just outlines things which have been said before in the technical presentations, how important it is to define certain milestones and which will help to standardize the underwriting approach. If we take an example of one of our clients, which is an installer of small solar commercial installations across Europe, and especially Central Europe, then you don't have to worry so much about the geographic locations. Soiling wouldn't be really a big issue. Irradiance volatility wouldn't be really high. We really then have to focus on understanding on what is their methodology, how they come up with the expected energy production, and how we standardize the quality of the balance of the system, including the quality of the modules, the inverters, etc. So we would come up with a certain agreed whitelist with a certain amount of suppliers for key components. We would agree to the bill of materials of those components, to those factories where those components have to come from, and we would agree on a methodology on how to predict energy production across a certain geographical scope. But if you're thinking about deploying investments into solar projects, in various countries across very different geographical and climate zones, this standardization cannot be done on a top level. We have to break it down at least into certain geographical locations where, as was discussed before, certain technical parameters have to be set for the components. Certain requirements has to be set for O&M contracts and EPC contracts in terms of what those contracts, which conditions those providers have to fulfill. And then there has to be a standardized agreement on how we calculate performance ratio, which data we use to come up with expected irradiance, and how we calculate megawatt hours at the end. I look forward to discussing in detail all of the milestones based on real examples we have done of projects, and we have a couple of case studies which we are happy to share with the audience if you're interested. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ncpre. Our next speaker is Mr. Shyam Kumar, General Manager, Business Development, NTPC Vidyut Vyapar Nigam. Mr. Kumar would be speaking on a failure of contractual obligations under power purchase agreements and sovereign guarantee insurance solutions. Mr. Kumar has worked in commissioning, operations and efficiency group in various capacities. He has looked after NTPC stations, tariff determinations, PPA negotiation, regulatory affairs. Currently, he is working as GM Business Development at NBVN, a 100% owned subsidiary of NTPC. Over to Mr. Kumar, please. Sir, can you hear us? I think Mr. Kumar's connection is not stable. DG sir, should I move forward?
Am I audible right now, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are, sir. Please carry on.
Yeah. Can you please upload the presentation? Hello. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You're audible, sir.
Hello.
You're audible, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Can you please? I request to upload the presentation which I forwarded. Just. Yeah. Thank you, Aisa, for giving us this opportunity. A very good afternoon to all the dignitaries and His Excellencies. I am working as GM Business Development in NTPC Vidyut Vyapar Nigam. It's a power trading arm of NTPC, which is a Maharatna PSU of Government of India. And NTPC has currently installed capacity of 63 gigawatt. And out of that, the renewable portfolio includes around 1 gigawatt of operating RE capacity, and another 2.5 gigawatt capacity is under implementation. NVVN, the trading arm of NTPC, is also involved in cross-border sale of power to the neighboring countries, both on long-term as well as short-term. NTPC is also an implementing agency responsible for implementation of RE capacity in the country. Now, coming to this slide, the common PPA risks, which, second slide, please.
We will talk on this issue.
We'll talk on the issues of contractual obligations under power purchase agreement and sovereign guarantee. Can you please change to the second slide? Yes. Renewable energy projects in today's fast-growing market is often constrained by real or perceived investment risk. These risks, first and foremost, the vital risk is the non-payment by the procurer, which the previous speakers have also covered. Then there may be delay in payment or non-payment at all at the agreed rate. Then the second risk is emerging due to the non-fulfillment of other obligations, which is stipulated in the PPAs. Like a subset of that can be curtailment of generation against the must-run conditions by SLDCs, state load dispatch centers. Then we are also encountering frequent issues of revisiting of PPA terms post-investment or post-commissioning. All these things are creating a new risk. Then similarly, the change in the tax rules or custom duties in a larger is affecting the project cost and tariff in a very significant way. And what is happening that procurers are often frustrating the PPA through litigations. In case of cross-border sale and cross-international PPAs, currency inconvertibility and currency rate fluctuation issues, we are tackling through having US dollar or euro payment provisions. Coming to the second slide, the major SPDs, the solar project developers' events of default, can be categorized in three broad categories. Like when they are not ready by the agreed date. In such situations, there are contract performance guarantees available to see that implementation goes as per the PPA terms. Similarly, during the operation phase, for meeting the required performance level, that is the required generation level or availability level, the provisions are there for deduction of running bills. That is that if the generation is not met at the current level, at the required level, then there are provisions for reduction from the running energy bills. But there are occasions when such situations are encountered due to system issues, power system issues. In a typical case, what is happening where NVVN is involved in selling power from a small RE project to a state discom, that particular SPD, the developer, is having its pooling point, which is having a very large load of power looms. Now, what is happening? The power loom load fluctuations is causing big damage to his inverters, and this was not foreseen in the PPAs. So what has happened that RPD has that ultimately that solar project developer was required to connect to a different pooling point, and that also resulted in loss of generation level. So he faced two problems. One, that he had to incur extra cost for connecting to the new pooling point, which was not envisaged. And second, he had to also take up the issue of low generation level compared to the agreed quantum as per the PPA provisions. So all these things are risks have been covered, and it is being attempted to see that such things are covered under the force majeure events. So coming to the fourth slide, can you, yeah. So the major, basically the major default or the PPA issues are emerging. That is not paying for power availed as per the agreement. That is then not able to draw the power by the designated date or during the term of PPA due to curtailment of generation through SLDCs. And all these things are basically posing a big risk to the solar power generator because it is directly affecting its revenue. The next slide, please. So the major instrument for covering procurer's default is letter of credit. In the recent times, such the risk of this letter of credit or payment risk has been covered by incorporating the concept of implementing agencies like SECI or NTPC, NHPC, wherein the payment risk of the SPDs are taken over by these intermediary utilities. And in turn, the delay in payment from the discoms is handled by these intermediary agencies. In case of international contract, the tariff fluctuations are being taken care by having the provision of US dollar or euro currency, and the amount of LC which is required to be incorporated in the international PPs especially, they provide for adequate time that may be required to pursue for the government guarantee, because normally the payment allowed time is 45 days, 30 days or 60 days as per the PPA provisions. Then in case of any issue, you need certain time for taking up the matter with the government authorities who have provided the government guarantee. So this should be the another thing. Still another thing in case of cross-border sale or international PPAs is that LC should be from LC should be LC should be from a reputed international bank in case of international PPAs, which takes care of currency availability issues and better facilitation of tariff payment. But in case of government guarantees or sovereign guarantees, it is required to keep the government authorities in loop whenever some payment risks happen right from the beginning. this compensates the time required for getting relief through the sovereign guarantee. Next slide, please. Can you please take to the next slide? Yeah. The other instrument for proposed default is incorporation of payment security fund. This is as per the guidelines of MNRE. And however, the payment security fund may cover a duration of 3 months or more. And this can take any unforeseen difficulty for a limited duration time. So what we see that the recent events of revisiting of PPA terms, curtailment by SLDCs against must-run principle, significant impact in the cost or tariff. These are the risks that are now becoming a challenge for and becoming a reason for frustration of PPAs. So in my view, there should be appropriate solutions through insurance, like the risk coverage through insurance may be incorporated or should be explored. And this may be explored through a separate expert group. Next slide, please. This is the last. And lastly, in case of cross-border sale, what we are seeing that since there is for the domestic contracts or PPAs, there are well laid out regulations. In case of international PPAs, there is required a coordination group comprising from representatives from both the sides, and which facilitates in reaching a common performance level, expected performance level, and all these PPA issues are taken care through all those forums. This is facilitating, and this is removing a lot of issues in the PPAs that are arising out of PPA provisions implementation. And lastly, what we are having in the cross-border PPAs that, as we are all aware, these are governed by the English laws, and the jurisdiction also needs to be spelled out clearly in the PPAs, that in case of, especially in the international PPAs, that whenever an issue happens, how it is to be, who will be the ultimate forum where the decision will be finally acceptable to both the parties. And this may be in case of international PPAs, it can be CR rules. So that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Shyam Kumar, and very enlightening presentation by you on the technical aspects of PPAs. And we would have heard you longer, but then because of shortage of time. So because there is a time overrun, I will now request, there is slightly change in the schedule, because Mr. Saurabh Mishra, who is the Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Financial Services, he's supposed to address another meeting. So we'll invite him now because he has to leave within a very short time. So Mr. Mishra, I'll a brief introduction. Mr. Mishra is the Joint Secretary of Financial Services. He is also is responsible for policy matters relating to general and health insurance sector, including PSUs and private general and health insurers, reinsurers, and insurance intermediaries, and legislative and administrative oversight of 6 PSUs of general insurers, and including the GICRE here in India. Thank you, Mr. Mishra. I welcome you now. I hand over the floor to you, Mr. Mishra.
Thank you very much. To begin with, I think I would like to really thank ISA in terms of calling out the insurance industry to be a part of this August gathering, and to also start getting some alignment with the thoughts which were being shared by some of the international leaders as well as some of the professors with their eminent thoughts onto the area of solar assets. So I think solar power is, as we all know, is really a fast developing sector with a concerted focus that was being made by none other than Honorable PM himself. And as a part of the vision, as we know that 40% of the power generation is required to be converted into the non-fossil side of it. And as a subset of it, 100 gigawatts to 2022 kind of a mandate that is being followed. I think insurance industry being a derivative of this entire discussion, it makes an eminent sense that this community is kind of converging into the entire space with which we are talking about. However, I must also say that there is a journey which has already been traveled into our sector with the product and performance guarantees, which are already being kind of made available through various insurance companies, as per the last report from the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority. But having said that, I think there is a 360-degree convergence which needs to emerge across the assets which are solar assets and the non-solar assets part of it. Somebody was covering it as a previous speaker. We need to look at a holistic map which the insurance needs to assess, understand, and then possibly decide about the rating part of it. One has to also look into the fact that the typicality that India as a geography carries vis-a-vis the rest of the geographies in terms of its hot climate, the soiling issue, the air pollutant issue, the quality of water issue, and obviously last but not the least, the Nat Cat event that keeps playing around. But notwithstanding that, I think the international classification, which was being discussed by the earlier speakers, onto the module standards in place, the reliability quotient goes through a huge change, and that should have a consequent positive impact onto the risk acceptance and the risk rating is what I would imagine. Lastly, very quickly, I think I would put a lot of emphasis on the data part of it. As a sector, insurance industry is very, very data hungry and is always kind of thriving on to having the right quality data coming to it for them to really assess and then quantify the risk and convert them into the rates appropriately. I would expect a substantial shift into that side, both between the OEMs as well as the suppliers, in order to provide those data quality, which can enhance the insurance coverages as well as the insurance paradigms or the bandwidth which the entire solar industry can be covered. Thank you so much for the entire industry to participate, which obviously discussion I was holding on with DG Sir Shri Tripathi as well as with Mr. Das. And I think we will be very happy to kind of understand and keep participating in terms of providing the best of the coverages also at the right and appropriate rates. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra. Thank you for your valuable input and support that you will be extending to Aisha in coming up with its policy with a comprehensive model for insurance in solar projects. There are many gaps now, so we have to fill off and you have to make the policy changes relevant to those sector. Thank you, Mr. Mishra. Thank you for sparing your time. Now I request Mr. Hitesh Kotak to make his presentation. I will have a brief introduction. The topic on which Mr. Hitesh Kotak and Ms. Julia Moser they will be presenting is performance guarantee features of valuable performance warranty insurance. Mr. Kotak is the CEO of India branch of Ncpre since February 2017, and he is a postgraduate in business management and is a fellow of Insurance Institute of India. Mr. Kotak comes with a vast experience of working with primary insurers in the areas of product management, bank assurance, international business, and reinsurance. Ms. Julia Moser works in Ncpre, a green tech solutions team, where she is responsible for Ncpre's photovoltaic activities globally. So I will request Mr. Kotak, as we are already over on the time, I will request you to short and make a brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Das, and once again, thank you, ISA, for giving us this opportunity. It is indeed an excellent forum, to discuss very openly all the topics, that we heard since morning. And as you said, since we are running out of time, I will, probably not further, add on to the time and, come in between me and, Julia. I'll also like to introduce Michael Schremp, who's with us. Michael Schremp heads our, green tech solutions and has been one of the founding team members and responsible for the photovoltaic, solutions across the world. So I have the privilege of having Michael and Julia both together, and I'll hand it over to them. But maybe a couple of sentences from my side. I think we all understood the importance of risk management and how insurance supports this particular risk transfer mechanism. And as you have seen, the solutions are already quite contemporary in India. One of the most benchmarked solutions are now available for the Indian sellers and buyers on both the sides, and a lot of effort has been made in the past few years to customize some of the covers for the Indian market to suit the Indian requirements. So we are very grateful that these products are already available. I would also like to thank the insurance authority who had the vision to allow such a long-term product to be filed and approved by from the non-life perspective, because generally 25-year product guarantees are not something which are very common. So it's also a great step taken by IRDA, and it's really helping promoting this product. And before we get into the details, my only request would be, in the last few years, the practical cases that we have seen, we often find that we are able to match the cover requirements. We are also able to greatly come closer to the price expectations. But what happens typically is, because some of these projects are already tendered, and the insurance cost has not been included in the tender, many times it's really difficult or really challenging to accommodate the cost of insurance additionally. So my request would be also to the authorities, that whenever they do tender requirements, they incorporate insurance at the beginning, so that the necessary costs are already factored in, because we all know tenders are very competitive, and once you lose the opportunity to factor the pricing, then it becomes very difficult to do backward calculation and figure it out. So that would be my request. I think most of the product solutions and the risk transfer solutions are available, and over to Julia and Michael to take you through for more details. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hitesh. This is Michael. Thanks for the time, and thank you to ISA for organizing this great event. It has been very interesting so far. I was very happy to listen. I would like to spend a couple of words before I hand over to Julia. Don't take too much of the time, but I just want to motivate why insurance needs to be active in that area. And Munich Re tries to be at the forefront to develop these solutions here. We've been doing that for 10 years. We've established that in the market. And our goal is to help the energy transition. That's also a social responsibility for Munich Re. And you would hear that probably quite rarely from an insurer, but I would love to see more competition. I would love to see more competition, insurers taking this risk. It's not a price competition we are having here. We are having a competition against climate change. And that's why insurers need to assume that risk. Of course, like Jan Mumenthaler mentioned before, you need to be careful where you insure your risk. You need to be careful that your insurer counterparty, you know them, they have a good claims handling, they have a good rating, they are solidly rated in the insurance market, like A-, what Jan also mentioned before. And of course, there are also risks, like Professor Shiradkar mentioned before. There are really critical risks. In India, you have a very, very challenging climate and different climate zones. So you need to be sure that the insurer is capable of mitigating that risk. We are doing that in solar, in wind, in storage, in fuel cell, in other technologies, and trying to expand the ways of insurability, specifically addressing performance and ultimately long-term return, which helps to generate or to achieve bankability. So again, my message from Munich Re is we are doing that at the forefront, but we need other insurers to create that market to really boost the energy transition. And without any further ado, for the technical details, where we see the risk and how we address them, to Julia. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I am sharing the presentation. Okay, thanks a lot also from my side for the possibility to speak at this ISA summit today. If we look at when sourcing PV modules in India, lenders are actually asked to insist on BIS certification of the PV modules rather than the Tier 1 list. So the Bureau of Indian Standards is the BIS. And the MNRE's recommendation you can see here below. If we look at what a warranty risk actually is, I mean, we've heard a lot earlier today, so I will not go so much into detail. But the market standard that we are seeing today would be a linear warranty of 97.5% with a per annum degradation of 0.7%, which would be the blue line here. And what can happen now is that in case of a serial defect, a failure, we would have an accumulation of modules that do significantly underperform, Whereas if we have excessive degradation, so Professor Shiratka mentioned that when doing tests in field, very often the degradation is more than 0.7% per annum. Then we would actually also have large problems here on the right. This is just to visualize a little bit what the challenge is. Now, the performance warranty that the manufacturers would usually provide is a repair, replace, or compensation of underperformance for this long period of 25 years. The problem is that very often the supplier, so the module manufacturer, does not have the financial rating of an insurance company. So also with the ongoing consolidation in the PV supplier market, the question is whether this is sufficient for this long period of time. Which is why when we talk about the warranty risk of solar, we usually mean these two events here that I mentioned to the left, that come together at the same time. So on the one hand, the underperformance of the PV modules, and on the other hand, the default of the PV module supplier, so he cannot step in. This is what we mean by the warranty risk of solar. Now, what is important when sourcing PV modules is to prevent or to try and make sure that the underperformance of the PV modules does not happen. There are certain aspects that you can take care of, the quality assurance, the certifications, bill of materials, also factory inspections and extended reliability tests. And if we look here below, the default of the PV module supplier, the supplier's credibility, we can look at that, its track record in the field, financial strength, also the Altman Z-score, the probability that the supplier is going to be insolvent in the next years. But what is very important is this piece in the middle, the warranty insurance, which would really be the backstop in case that the risk occurs. So a low warranty risks leads to high bankability. We have seen these risks before. I've put them into a risk pyramid where you can actually see from top to bottom the increasing severity of the risk. So the risks that are further up here would lead, while these risks would lead to a temporary loss of revenue, the actual risks mentioned here below, so the external physical damage risk and the warranty risk can actually cause a material threat. So for these risks, it definitely makes sense to buy insurance. The question is where to or how to source these warranty insured modules in order to help with transparency, because in the past we have been requested a lot. We have created a so-called PV warranty partner website, and the link you can see here to the right, which actually mentions the module manufacturers that are currently, it's always up to date, that are currently a warranty partner, so that qualify for being insured. Projects that use those modules qualify for being insured with Munich Re. Of course, there are also other warranty insurances apart from Munich Re. Just always make sure to look at the criteria. So what Hitesh has mentioned in the beginning is actually, it makes a lot of sense to incorporate the insurance cost in the beginning, and we have been asked in the past to provide recommendations for tenders. So this would actually be our recommendation for insurance conditions when procuring modules, that a supplier shall obtain PV warranty insurance with the following specifications. And this is what I meant earlier, that there is also competition in the market. And I agree to Michael that that competition makes a lot of sense in this area. But also, in order to be sure to have a high value insurance, you need to look for the actual features of the insurance. And we have made the experience that now in the past past years, the buyers of modules have become much more sophisticated, interested, also read the insurance conditions, want to see the insurance conditions properly, which makes a lot of sense. It's no longer a tick in the box mentality, but really a knowing your product mentality. So we recommend an insurance limit of at least 5% of the module value should be dedicated exclusively to a project. Also, this insurance limit should be for a period of 25 years and should not decrease in later years, and also not be cancelable, because we are talking about, the major value is because of this long-term insurance. Then the coverage should be transferable to the project owner in the event of the manufacturer's default. Also an important feature. And the reinsurer should have a financial rating of at least AA- by S&P, because the rating stands for financial stability, which is again a very important feature if we talk about these long-term investments. And secondly, the supplier shall provide a proof of the PV warranty insurance within 1 month, but not later than the first module shipments taking place. And by proof, we mean that you should really have some written proof and not just being told that a warranty insurance is in place. So yes, I would like to make a final remark, because also in earlier presentations it has been mentioned once or twice that the warranty insurance is available with many restrictions. However, we have heard from Professor Srivatka that the average degradation rate of modules in the field is often higher than the 0.7%. We have heard it's not a given that modules actually do work for 25 years. And we have also heard from Dr. Sastry about the challenges in quality management. So be assured that we as reinsurer do our best to offer valuable solutions to the market. But in order to do that in a sustainable manner, and not just for a few years, but really long term, we also have to make sure that proper quality and risk management is done, that the certification is in place, etc. And this might be what makes us seem restrictive. So if you have any further, if you want to discuss this further, I know we have limited amount of time also, but if you have further questions, here are our contact details. And yes, feel free to get in touch. And thanks again for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Julia, for an extensive, although short presentation. In fact, I had time permitted, you would have presented it more longer, I would have listened to you. But we'll look forward to another opportunity where we'll discuss in detail about the performance guarantee and warranty insurance provisions. Now I request His Excellency ambassadors and national focal points to intervene if they have any questions or anything to the speakers, and also the audience if they have any questions to any of the speaker. Any questions from the audience or from the national focal points about the to any of the speakers? They can raise their hand, or they can once they raise their hand, I think the system will allow them. Bimal, is there any questions? Any interventions?
No question as of now, sir.
And any interventions from the national focal points?
I don't see anyone has raised any hand.
There is a question from Mr. Anil Jha, I can see in the box.
Okay, so Mr. Anil Jha is asking what will be the impact of tariff in India if a optimum insurance is taken by the developers. So you want to know the impact with regard to money per kilowatt hour.
This question is to Yash. Can you reply to this? Yash?
Yeah, hi, sir.
Yeah, please.
So, see, if what Anil is asking, I think to have a better clarity, if when the bid comes for the different for some solar power park, if the bid organizer like NTPC or SECI, if they put it in the tender condition that the modules needs to be insured for 25 years, there's certain level of weather coverages needs to be there. So when anyone who's bidding for the project, so all the large IPPs in the country, large or small, then the pricing, the bid that they are doing, the pricing will be adjusted to these insurance costs. And then what the pricing is coming, what we see today, 2.5, 2.3 per kilowatt hour, those rates will not be there. That will be on a higher side because all the clients will be adjusting. But then we need to understand and we should appreciate by having these protection, at the end of the day, it's the grid and the nation as a whole is benefiting because there will be a certain, as I always mentioned and kept on using the term sustainable growth will be required. So this is something can only be done as the PPA rates are typically finalized in a process of bid, right? So when the owner, the plant owners is able to take into consideration the pricing of the performance warranty, whether on XYZ, the other covers, then it will be a fair price. Whoever is able to take a better chance or quote aggressively based taking all these consideration, then the PPA rate will be finalized. That's it. That's my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Yash. If any other question, I think there are 3-4 questions. Anil again asks impact in price per kilowatt, and then in that case whether rates, whether states will sign PPA or should we move to feed-in tariff? Yeah, Yash, can you come up again?
Yeah, sorry. I'll first take up Shrikant's question where he's asking, is insurance available for a small rooftop project with a capacity of 10 kilowatt per hour? So Shrikant, typically insurers or insurer does not look at covering such a small plant. Typically it should be 20 to 25 megawatt. But if you're coming up with a portfolio, let's take off overall portfolio where the combined capacity is more than 20, 25 or 30 megawatt, and then the insurer or reinsurer can look at it, because otherwise 10 kilowatt or 100 kilowatt does not make sense for them, and it will not make sense for you in terms of when the pricing will come, because there's something like a minimum earned premium, and there's a lot of, as what Ncpre or Italy has mentioned, you can see there's a lot of effort which goes in putting up a terms. So it will not be viable for such a small project.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. You have probably answered all the questions. There is no more questions. Now we have come to the last part of the whole webinar. I'll request Mr. Arun Mishra, who is a retired IS officer. He was former secretary in Government of India. He is also senior advisor with Aisha. I'll request him to sum up and give his concluding address and vote of thanks to the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Das, and thank you all our honorable guest speakers and all the attendees. You know, over the last 3.5 hours, we have had some very, very outstanding presentations by our eminent panelists. You know, the risks that are involved right at the stage of conceptualizing a particular project, the material supply, the project implementation, the risks involved during the course of the maintenance of the project, the global risk which are special to a particular country and to the world at large. All these risks have been factored in, and all these have been discussed by our very eminent group of panelists. And the very fact that all these presentations spoke about these minor details so that it's not a simple process. It is a very complicated process, particularly a project with so many variables and which have to have a life of 25 years. Planning insurance coverage for that is going to be very, very difficult. You know, one of the guys asked, what is the cost implications? It's very difficult to compute the cost implications. The only thing that I will mention to him is that, you know, in February this year, when when the insurance rates were revised, the Power Producers Association of India mentioned this. They said that so far the cost of insurance for a 1,000 megawatt plant costing about 6,000 crores in India used to be about 260 crores. But in February, it went up to 780 crores. And they were not even COVID times. So these are hard times and very, very difficult to compute the actual cost. But yes, like one of our eminent speakers mentioned, if it can be computed and mentioned upfront, then life becomes easier for everyone. This is the second series of the discussion we have on insurance. And I think thanks to all the speakers, they have given us enough material to come out with some kind of a policy document, some kind of a paper which can be circulated among all our member countries, and they can mention all the points that need to be seen to make sure that a project is properly designed and also properly implemented. Because designing and implementing a project properly will bring down the cost of insurance. We cannot allow the cost of insurance to be so high that it adds to the cost of energy. And even though it appears that the cost of energy is coming down, it should not be allowed to be offset by the cost of insurance. While it is very, very necessary that we should factor in all that is possible to be calculated beforehand, upfront. But there shall always be some risk involved, and that's where the entrepreneurship comes in. If everything is listed out and all that you have to do is just add some tick marks and do some plus and minuses, then the entrepreneurship will not come up. There shall be some risk involved, but the whole idea should be to collect in such a manner that at least proper due diligence in designing a project and getting an insurance coverage is there. So I will now our task, Aisha's task will be to, on the basis of presentations we have had in the last two seminars, and of course, on other input, we start drafting a paper which will be circulated to all our participating member countries. And I'm so grateful that so many of them participated. Initially, when for a long period of time, the number of participants was beyond 100. I can understand it is almost like 3.5 hours. The number has come down now, but there are still lots of people who are present. We will circulate the paper, and if required, Mr. Das can always take the help of a professional to help him drafting this particular paper. This will be unique contribution. This will be unique contribution by ISA to all our member countries. And luckily for us, we have academicians, we have promoters, we have developers, we have insurers, we have people from the government, we have people who have worked in this area for a long time. All of them have contributed selflessly to this particular program. And I'm not listing out all the names particularly, specifically, but please accept ISA's gratitude to you for coming out with such a professional and such a informative presentation and clarifying so many things. So allow me to thank you all and compliment and congratulate Mr. Das and his team for organizing this second seminar. And the Sun Meet is basically to expand our knowledge and also explore the ways in which we can partner with each other and go ahead. So thank you very much again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Particular thanks to all the speakers who contributed so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Das.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra, for a very brief and very good summing up of the entire thing and Aisha's action point, takeaway points for Aisha. I thank, on behalf of Aisha, I thank all the panelists who took interest and made very good presentation. Of course, time limit was a constraint, but still they have done an excellent job. We look forward to have further association with all of you so that we can make a good draft which can be guideline for the all member countries. I thank His Excellency DG for patiently sitting all through and giving the opportunity to us to make the presentation and take up the points for the Aisha action points for Aisha. I thank the Honorable Secretary, His Excellency Mr. Chaturvedi, for attending this conference. I also thank Mr. Saurabh Mishra, the Joint Secretary, for attending and giving his valuable input into this conference. I thank Mr. Mishra and all the national focal point, His Excellencies and ambassadors who attended this conference. And we will be taking it further, the action points. There are many action points on this as a outcome of this webinar. We will be taking out these action points and following it up. Moreover, the presentations will be uploaded in the website after taking permission from all the speakers. Some query was there that whether the presentations will be uploaded. It will be uploaded, yes, after taking permission from all the speakers. I thank you all for giving, though the time was overrun, but still you have attentively heard the speakers and raised questions. Thank you all. Thank you. This is the end of this.
At least you can ask the speakers to share with you a copy of the presentation. We will share it with the general public only when they clear it. But we can use those presentations because
we have the presentations. They have already sent us. They have already sent us.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sastry. Thank you. One has heard about you a lot, but it's first time that one is seeing you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So I would be able to meet you, sir. I'm just next door on the I6, so I'll be able to meet you and then
That's
discuss
really
more
nice. You know, Mr. Tripathi talks a lot about you. Yeah, very good.